Welcome back to Uninformed Movie Reviews, the movie review podcast where we review movies. Episode 9. Hey, how's it going, gentlemen?
That is a stellar intro, Franklin. That's right. The Thirsty Threesome is back to talk about one of the best auteurs of American cinema. Who are we talking about, David?
In no way do I condone that nickname. We're talking about John Hughes today. John Hughes, everyone.
How exciting to get David's consent for the nickname by continuing the podcast. It's a very momentous occasion, and very excited to talk about John Hughes today as well.
I just appreciate how far we're going to carry on with this bit, because once I slice it up in editing, it's not going to make any sense anymore.
So I guess we should talk a little bit for those who don't know. I don't know why you're clicking on a John Hughes podcast if you don't know who he is, but
maybe to learn.
Well, I would describe they need to learn, and I would describe John Hughes's work as probably the best slice of life Midwest real life anime. It's essentially a slice of life anime in real life.
Whoa,
and very interesting take, Danny.
You're so spot on, man. I know Frank has no idea what that means, but yes, that is like exactly what it is.
No idea.
It's all
in my head. I was like, I don't know if that works at all, but apparently it does. I'll have to take your word for it.
It's like all the filler episodes of Inuyasha where Kagome just goes to high school. That's like 16 Candles, pretty much.
Yeah, there's whole shows that are just like that in anime. That's just something that happens at high school. It's like teen drama, coming of age, or something.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well,
so that's John Hughes. In a way, he's our slice of life Midwest anime. John Hughes, that's right, born February 18th, 1950 in Lansing, Michigan. Hughes was born to Marion Crawford and John Hughes Sr. He's a junior who worked in sales. He was the only boy of 3 sisters. Spent the first 12 years of his life in Michigan before moving to Illinois and Chicago, where most of his stories take place, those of which he's written. Hughes described his childhood as pretty lonely because he grew up in a place that was, quote, mostly girls and old people. And he grew up with having a huge affinity for music and kind of clinging to it as part of his identity. Loved sports, really into hockey. Loved the Beatles, a huge Beatles fanatic, and Bob Dylan fanatic, apparently. Hughes actually came up... Well, firstly, he would use his movies as an escape from real life and from the criticism of his parents, which, being the only boy in my family, I totally understand. After attending and eventually dropping out of University of Arizona in Tucson, which I had no idea he went to, Hughes began to sell jokes to notable comedy acts such as Rodney Dangerfield and Joan Rivers. He then used his joke writing capabilities to land a job at an advertising firm in Chicago in 1970. This led Hughes to work for Virginia Slims, the tobacco company, which in turn took him to work for Philip Morris in New York City. And vis-a-vis, he came into contact with National Lampoon magazine, and that's kind of where his start really took off. It really lends a bit as to like how prolific of a writer this guy is, because after becoming a regular contributor to National Lampoon, the editor at National Lampoon, P.J. O'Rourke, commented him as John wrote so fast and so well that it was hard for a monthly magazine like National Lampoon to keep up with him. I think a notable contribution is that he actually wrote something called Vacation 58, which was about his personal family experience, which would then serve as the basis as National Lampoon's Vacation.
Okay.
Huh. I did not know that.
And that's funny
Right?
that you're bringing up this thing about how fast he
interesting.
writes, too, because a lot of his movies he wrote, like, in less than a week. When you start looking into that, it's so weird. And I remember him saying something about, like, he has an editor's mindset. So when he sits down to write a script, he doesn't approach it like maybe a typical script writer would. He's just there to, like, quickly and efficiently complete the task. I was like, that's really interesting. That's cool, though. That makes a lot of sense. It also makes
That's
sense
right.
everyone's smoking in his movies because he worked for Philip Morris.
And it's funny because like if his movies sucked, you would be like, well, yeah, they suck. This guy's like banging out these scripts over a weekend. Like, come on, dude. But it's amazing because they're so dope. There's like so many movies, like screenplays that this guy wrote that are just like essential like to our childhoods. You know what I mean? A lot of people's childhoods.
Even outside of directing, like you're saying, Frank, he's on so many credits as a writer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's probably on more movies than people think that he is.
That'll kind of segue into like our list that we're going to talk about today. But just really quick, this is just this triggered a random memory. I was really into John Hughes like late middle school, early high school, and as a freshman in high school, I'd been watching like Breakfast Club over and over again, and like I was having a conversation with one of my history teachers. I can't remember his name. He was a cool guy, but we were talking about movies, and I was saying that I was really into John Hughes, and then I was like, did you know he wrote Breakfast Club like in a sitting or something? Or he wrote it like in a couple days? And then my high school teacher was like, have you ever seen Breakfast Club? It definitely seems that way, doesn't it?
Oh.
And I was like, dang, man, you're roasting. This was like, I was obsessed with that movie. I just felt so roasted.
Like, this is my God right now.
That's also the case with like 16 Candles, apparently.
Yeah.
Wrote that out over 2 days.
Yeah, a lot of these, like Ferris Bueller, I think was 6 or something like that. A lot of these movies, he really just churned them out. But let's talk about the movies. So today we're talking about movies directed by John Hughes, like specifically, like Danny was saying. If we went writer's credits, there's 51 projects he's written on according to IMDb. And you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that on a podcast, okay? So
no. But those are very notable for sure.
Oh, and some of them are his biggest movies, like National Lampoon's movies, Home Alone. Some of these, what's the other one? Pretty in Pink movies.
Beethoven,
yeah.
Beethoven, yeah. When you think about
Flubber,
these movies,
for God's sakes.
and Home Alone, The Holiday Heist. No, I'm just joking. I don't think he actually wrote that one. They just gave him credits for the characters. But the 8 we're talking about today are the movies that he directed and in this case wrote as well. And in chronological order, 1984 we have 16 Candles. In 1985 we got Breakfast Club and Weird Science back to back, respectively. In 86 we get Ferris Bueller's Day Off. 87 Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. In 88 She's Having a Baby. In 89 Uncle Buck. And in 91, he's topping it off with Curly Sue, his last director feature. So now comes the ranking part, I guess, right? Now's the nitty-gritty.
Ooh.
That being said,
now we get down to it. Now feelings get hurt.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. David, I believe you're up first for your number 8.
Okay, so I'm going to pitch number 8. We'll see if you guys agree. For number 8, I felt there was no other choice. And I'll fight you to the death on this. No, I'm just joking. I feel like it's got to be She's Having a Baby.
Interesting.
That's what I also had for my number 8, David.
Oh. I feel like I put Curly Sue as my number 8.
Oh, interesting.
But I would relinquish to have She's Having a Baby because I feel a little bit indifferent about it.
Well, to be honest, Curly Sue is my 7. So I'm okay with if you're okay with that, I'm okay with putting Curly Sue at 7. I don't know what
I'm fine with it.
Well, we'll talk about that when we get to 7 because I have some opinions.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so 8, we're here at 8. It's She's Having a Baby. And I guess I'm the one responsible. Let me give you a quick synopsis because I know you haven't seen this movie. Let's be honest. If you clicked on this podcast because you like John Hughes, you still haven't seen this movie.
You were not thinking, oh, maybe they'll tell me about She's Having a Baby.
Yeah, I bet they put it as number 1.
So She's Having a Baby. We got star Kevin Bacon and Elizabeth McGovern, who I wasn't familiar with. Basically, they're a married couple. And in a way, this is kind of like John Hughes' most adult movie. It's about like the drama of marriage. And basically, Kevin Bacon feels unfulfilled in life. And the movie is more or less about him discovering his purpose. And guess what? She has a baby. Spoiler alert. There's some other stuff I'm skipping over. Like Alec Baldwin is like his young friend who's got a lot of like sex appeal, and there's some weird tension going on.
Scumbag friend.
Yeah, he's also like he's a bad dude. You can't hit on your best friend's wife. That's just not cool.
That's a technical foul.
That's
for sure.
Foul. That's
a technical foul.
Pretty much it on the synopsis. I feel like this is a surface level one. Just real quick, my thoughts on this. when we watch She's Having a Baby, I knew it was going to be last, but the thing I really like about it is how experimental he gets with this movie. There's so many like interesting camera techniques, and he's kind of really going into and let me see, I wrote it down in the past, and I know it's sort of a surrealist movie in a way. He's got these really elaborate set designs, and it's experimental. It's like his most experimental movie. He's really trying different things, and She's Having a Baby. But, you know, it's just not as good. And I think for me, the plot, there's really no plot. It's the characters are pretty interesting, but the plot is a dud. You know, it's nothing significant happens to sway you one way or the other.
It's very formulaic. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And at least for me, when I was watching it, I was thinking, you know, this is kind of like, it's interesting that John Hughes would write something like this, because this is like a coming of age story when you're already of age. And it's like
the second coming.
Exactly, the second coming of age.
Coming of middle age.
You will. The coming of middle age. It's kind of like if This Is 40 had done things pretty wrong. You know what I mean? But it is really lackluster. Like, some of the jokes are good, some of the jokes fall flat. I feel like it's more relatable as someone that's going into my 30s when I was watching it. You know what I mean? You can definitely see what he was vying for.
If I saw this when I was...
I think Kevin...
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, if I saw this when I was 15, I would have hated it. Like, you're 100% right.
Yeah.
For sure.
How do you relate to it? But, you know, I think what was interesting about it was having known a little bit about John Hughes's background and how he got into advertising and in Chicago and all like that. I think that he painted himself into Kevin Bacon's shoes. And I feel like this is somewhat a portrayal of him in that way.
Yeah, and what Danny's referencing is there's a scene at the beginning of the movie where basically Kevin Bacon can't get like a good job. And he goes in for an interview with his ad agency, and his like relationship's on hold because he's a loser essentially. And he lies to the ad agency, and they even catch him in the lie. They're like, "We checked out your resume, and all these references are fake." But they give him a chance anyways because they see he's got that hunger. So yeah, after you said that synopsis of John Hughes, for sure, man, that connects there.
How do you feel about slave wages?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but that's funny because that was actually Paul Gleason, who was his boss too. Another from the Hughes catalog.
John Hughes definitely likes to recycle his favorite actors for sure. And we're gonna see a lot of that.
If you're not familiar with Paul Gleason, he's most famous for being the principal in Breakfast Club. So we'll get to him and his Barry Manilow wardrobe very soon.
Well, I think you guys have kind of said it perfectly. You know, it's the problem is the plot. It's even though he does some really cool stuff with like the fantasy element. I think my favorite of which is like the lawnmower like dancing scene. That's like really fun. But yeah, it's just like it's a story we've heard over and over again, and like the same order we heard it. Both the characters are like a little bit unlikable at times. That both of them neither of them are handling anything like super great. So I don't know. There's not a lot of redeeming stuff. One thing I wanted to point out, we all ranked it last. It was like super easy for us to agree on. Eventually, we had to. There was no convincing for Danny. It was pretty concedable. It's got a 5.9 out of 10 on IMDb, a 40% Rotten Tomatoes, but this is somebody's favorite in a category, and it's a writer-director who makes mostly not great films and a couple okay ones, and then also Red State, which is pretty dope. This is Kevin Smith's favorite John Hughes movie.
You know,
Yikes.
every day I wake up,
I can see that. This kind of reminds me of Jersey Girl.
Every day I wake up, I say, "There's no way I can hate Kevin Smith more than I did yesterday," and somehow opportunities present themselves.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's like becoming acquainted with someone you used to just like. It's like meeting your hero, you know what I mean? I'm not physically meeting Kevin Smith, but I'm learning more about him, and I like him less and less from when I was young. You know...
No.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, like, some statistics about this is She's Having a Baby is still a financial stinker too. It was made on $20 million. It only grossed $16 million. It didn't even make its initial investment back.
Dang, that is rough.
Oh yeah.
And this is 88. I mean, I'd have to look up and see what other movies came out at the same time, but it just doesn't seem as appealing. Even the cover just looks a little bland.
There had to have been something out in 88 that was better than
Yeah.
this movie. There's no way that like that they all suck this bad.
Yeah.
And it's not even that like it's terrible. It's just like not great. It's and it's got some really like awesome siblings to contend with. That's a big
Yeah.
part of the problem.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that this movie's bad. I think it's just forgettable
No.
and a little bland.
Yeah.
There is one thing that is worth noting, and guys, that's Alec Baldwin's chest hair in this movie. The man,
Oh, yikes.
the man is just full tuft. It's like he's wearing like a, like a white tee, sleeveless white, the wife beater as it is referred to as sometimes. The hair is like popping out of the sides. It's like popping out from
pretty
like
gross.
the arm. It's intense. And then there's scenes where it's just coming fully off his chest, and he's moving. His body is moving. He's breathing, and the hair is still. It's gained sentience. It is something that we should be afraid of.
It should have had its own credit like in the credits. Alec Baldwin's chest hair as itself.
Plaguing itself.
Yeah, that's something else. Okay, well, I think we can move on from She's Having a Baby.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
definitive number 8.
All right, well, Danny, why don't you lead us into the conversation about what will be number 7?
Oh man, number 7. I mean, I feel like y'all know what mine was. That's going to be the old 1991's Curly Sue for me. Does anyone have objection to that before I move on?
I agree.
So
with
you know
Curly Sue.
that wasn't my number 7.
Oh.
Yeah, that wasn't my number 7, but we're pretty close at this point, and I wouldn't mind conceding it to 7 because it was a toss-up for me anyways between these two. And number 6 is my turn anyways, so I'll just toss it in there. We'll see what
There we
happens.
go.
So yeah, I mean, Curly Sue, number 7. Why don't you tell us about it, Danny?
I mean, it's a very simple synopsis. Honestly, it's just Jim Belushi, a homeless man, and his young companion, Allison Porter, right, survive by conning people. They meet a pretty woman who may need them even more than they need her.
Aw, how sweet.
Wow. Yeah. This movie, man, I did not thoroughly enjoy watching this movie. It's too formulaic, if that makes sense. It's weird that this is John Hughes' like last directorial movie because it uses so much of his formula, but it just falls flat on a lot of stuff. Also, Jim Belushi is just not leading man material, man. I mean, they tried so hard.
Yeah, I
But-
mean, I was going to say, like, it shouldn't surprise anyone that it was going to be a simple plot synopsis, because you can't tell me you've ever heard of a project with Jim Belushi involved and thought, ooh, I wonder if this is going to be a thinker.
I am an avid hater of Jim Belushi. I really can't tolerate him. And I gotta say, this movie charmed my socks off, man. I liked
Interesting.
this movie way more than I thought I would ever like it. It's maybe the most adorable of all the John Hughes movies and wholesome. The things that
It's cute.
The things that I hate, but fully on board. And you know what it is? It's that little Curly Sue, man. Allison Porter. She lays it on pretty
Show
thick,
stealer.
But whew, I love it. I was enchanted. But
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
like what Frank was saying, though,
It kind of speaks a bit. No, go ahead.
Well, I was
go
just
ahead.
gonna say, like what Frank was saying earlier, though, it's got very talented siblings, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
you're nice, Curly
I mean,
Sue, but you're not.
It's hard to
beating-
stack up in the rest of the pantheon.
Yeah,
But like you're saying about Allison Porter, I think like what did shine about this movie is obviously John Hughes excels in writing dialogue for children. Like he taps into that mindset so well, and I think she was younger than she was being portrayed in cinema on the screen. I think she was actually like 6 or 7, portraying being 9 or something like that. But she
She
still
was a real
excelled.
mature 6.
Yeah.
um,
She really portrayed that well, and she just delivers those lines great. You know what
Oh,
I mean?
yeah.
Like he has a knack for finding children actors that can
Yeah.
portray the lines he's writing.
and I think it's weird because, like, I agree with what you're saying. I feel like his dialogue for children doesn't make sense all the time. Like, they're more mature characters than they should be. but the way that he writes it, it's always convincing in the delivery. So he's like, and especially when you think about even the teen movies, he has these teens talking and discussing in a way that you wouldn't expect teenagers to. But it comes off as believable, and it's something about his writing, man. He writes good dialogue. I enjoy the John Hughes dialogue. They're nice and funny.
Yeah, I mean, I also thoroughly enjoyed watching this movie. Never heard of it before we set out to do this.
Yeah.
When David read them off on the list when we decided we were doing this, I was like, what? She's having a baby? Curly Sue? You're making this up right now. I ain't never heard of none of this. But, I mean, solid watch, man. I would recommend it. It's pretty solid for, like, something light. You know what I mean? It's a nice, light, relaxing... this little girl's stupid sassy. That's some really good stuff. I don't know if I had any important notes about it because you kind of get what you get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One thing I did want to shout out, John Getz, the actor who plays Walker McCormick. He's like the jerk that the pretty lady is pointing out, and they kind of have like a reverse Pretty Woman going on.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of fun.
We were talking about
but that guy plays a solid jerk. That guy does a really good job. He's really good at being unlikable versus James Belushi, as he's credited in this movie, who is just unlikable.
James Belushi.
Woo! Yeah, I mean, just to kind of hit further on like where this movie stands in the pantheon of John Hughes, we're looking at Rotten Tomatoes aggregate score of 13%. 13%.
Yeah.
Trust me, when I was about to rent this, I saw the Rotten Tomato score and I was like, oh man, this feels like a regret. It's not a regret. I will say it's a great like Sunday afternoon, watch with the family kind of movie. It's fun.
It makes a good companion piece to like Home Alone. If you have a child who's stoked on Home Alone, bust out Curly Sue and they'll probably love that movie too.
Yeah, you could watch this with kids and it's totally fine.
It's a family movie for sure.
IMDb 5.9 out of 10. The statistics on this guy, $25 million budget, 33.7 gross box office. Did pretty well.
That's not bad. That's weird.
They made a little bit of money.
It's the exact same IMDb score as She's Having a Baby, which makes me think.
Yeah, that 5.9.
Yeah, how weird.
That's why I'm indifferent.
And you know what?
It definitely lands higher than She's Having a Baby for me. You know what I mean? Like I'd watch this movie again at some point.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Before we move on, I feel like we have to shout out that Steve Carell's in this movie, and he is so young.
Oh,
he is like so incredibly young in this movie. It's got to be. I'm trying to find it.
Also
right now.
oddly credited as Stephen Carell.
And not only Stephen Carell's in this movie, and it's his first acting credit, guys.
Adorable.
Weird.
Yeah. So
good for you, Steve.
To kind of point out another actor I saw in She's Having a Baby, actually, when Kevin Bacon goes to the fertility clinic and they do the whole, are you sure there's any in there? Kind of drop off of his sample. Lab
who was that nurse again?
Yeah, it's, what's her name? Lily Taylor. That's the actress from The Conjuring.
Yeah, the mom from The Conjuring,
recently.
Yeah, I think Michelle caught it when
and
we were
The
watching
Haunting.
it.
The Haunting, yeah. Michelle had caught that.
So when I saw it, I was like, that face is way too familiar. Yeah.
Oh, you know what else?
Yeah, it's a fun one.
I didn't take a note on this and I forgot it, but She's Having a Baby, that ending credit scene where it's just like so many people's faces and it's like so many celebrity cameos. There's like... like the whole Ghostbusters are in there pretty much. And like,
I'm glad you brought that up, David, because I
Cool.
actually took down a list earlier because it was so funny to me. You know what I mean? We've got Kirstie Alley, Harry Anderson, Jay and Michael Aston, Dan Aykroyd, Matthew Broderick, John Candy, Diane Cannon, Belinda Carlisle, Ted Danson, Judy Evans, Woody Harrelson, Robert Hayes, Magic Johnson, Michael Keaton, Joanna Kearns, Penny Marshall, Bill Murray, Roy Orbison, Cindy Pickett, Annie Potts, John Ratzenberg, Ali Sheedy, Lyman Ward, Will Wheaton, and Warren Zevon.
Dude, that is so weird.
I really appreciate the Wheaton in there.
She's Having a Baby's worth watching just
it's
for
so
that
nuts.
credit sequence. It's so bizarre, but it's like packed with so many faces.
Yeah, that's kind of fun. Just going, what?
Oh, speaking of endings,
Why?
one of the things that I enjoyed Curly Sue, and then you get to the end credits, and it's the worst song I've ever heard in an ending credits. And I was like, who is this terrible song by? And I looked it up and it was Ringo Starr. And I was just thinking, this is a bummer.
My God.
Like,
that song was so unenjoyable.
It's like when you don't have McCartney money, you have to book a Ringo tune.
We got a Beatle. Oh my God, McCartney's ready?
You have a long lost John Lennon track? Oh man.
No.
Yeah, that
George
was rough
Harrison?
stuff. I had forgotten about that, honestly.
Okay. Do you guys have anything else you want to say about old Curly Sue? Or should we move on to number 6? Which
No, it's fine.
I mean,
I feel
it's
the
a
heat.
fine film.
Yeah. It's fine.
Oh yeah, this is going to be divisive.
All right, so
I really want to know.
For my number 6, which I originally had at 7, because honestly, for this John Hughes film, I could take it or leave it. It's like never really been my favorite. I'm going to go ahead and pitch 16 Candles, the 1984 release, for number 6.
Me too, buddy.
That's so
All right.
funny. I have Weird Science is my number 6.
Get out of here, David.
I have Weird Science as my number 6. 16 Candles is good, guys. I'm not sure what you hate.
It's all right.
There's some stuff that's
It's
maybe
okay.
questionable going on in that plot line.
Yeah, that's a
hasn't
whole
aged
nother
well.
thing. Besides all the questionable stuff, I've never been a huge fan of this movie.
Yeah, me either.
Well, we'll
I
talk
honestly
about
like
that right
Pretty
now,
in
but-
Pink better.
Are we settling for 6? Because I feel like I have some wiggle room here. I feel like it's too good for 6.
I would like it at number 6.
No, there's no way I'm going to concede 6 for Weird Science, David.
Oh,
It's not
yeah, I can't
happening.
do
Can you concede Weird Science for 5?
I don't even know, dude. I have it way higher than that.
Yeah, no, I can't.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like I can see Weird Science not being 6, but 16 Candles being 6 is too low for me. What do you guys have for 5?
For 5, I gotta have Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Hey, me too.
I also have Planes,
Oof.
Trains, and Automobiles.
Hey.
What-
So, I mean, that seems like a 5. I feel like we can't
Well,
move that.
how about we move Planes, Trains, and Automobiles down 1? We'll move up 16 Candles 1 to 5. And I'll be willing to be more lenient with your ridiculously high ranking of Weird Science. Because I'm assuming it's going to be
You're
like
ridiculous.
2 or 3. You know what I mean? And then you guys are going to be like, no way.
Okay.
There's no way it's less than 4 or something like that. So
I will say that these 3 are transient for me because I like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles not as much as something else, but I would be okay with that trade.
With putting Planes, Trains at 6 and 16 Candles at 5.
I could feel
Yeah,
comfortable
even
about
though I
that.
don't necessarily agree because 16 Candles is trash. I'll concede it.
Yeah, that feels amicable.
Okay, there we go. We've sprung a deal here on the podcast. So Frank, tell us about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
All right, so I guess I'm going to tell... yeah, here we go. So planes, they fly. Trains are a little bit limited because you're stuck on like a track, you know what I mean? Like you can only go where the track is. There's only certain turns you can take or go like backwards, I guess. Automobiles, pretty solid. Use them a lot. They're pretty simple, you know what I mean? Some are nice, some are not great. Came out in 1987. It's got a 7.6 on IMDb, a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. Stars comedy legend and boyishly good-looking man Steve Martin as Neil Page, Jonathan Candy as Del Griffith, the most obnoxious man that's ever lived.
Yeah.
Some other performances in this film by Layla Robbins, who plays Susan Page, the wife of Steve Martin. She's just like longing for him the whole time. Very small part in the film. But
way to
I wanted to
describe
point her out because she plays Grace Mallory in The Boys. Ooh, is that
Hey,
foreshadowing for an
wow,
upcoming
she looks
release?
Super familiar.
Ooh.
Oh, it makes sense.
What is this boys?
It does
you
make
speak
sense.
of? I'm sure.
The Boys. We've also got Michael McKean, which is one of my favorite like character actors. He always pops up. You might, and not even character, like he has some solid like leading man important roles. Maybe in This Is Spinal Tap, Clue as Colonel Mustard, and he is whatever the brother's name in Better Call Saul.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. He's the cop in this movie. He's one of the cops.
That guy looks so different in this Spinal Tap compared to how he looks now.
Right?
Yeah.
But essentially, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles tells a tale of Neil Page, who's just trying to get home for Thanksgiving, and things keep going wrong and worse. And a lot of the time, it's at the direct cause of John Candy's character, who he is somehow stuck with for this entire journey. It's about just this straight-laced man learning a thing about friendship, but that lesson being like a really tough one. This guy has a real rough go of it. But yeah, I mean, just light romp between, where are they going, from Chicago to New York or vice versa?
Vice versa.
All over the Midwest, really.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the classic odd couple movie with two comedy giants. You know, that's just amazing, man. This really shows how John Hughes can just take such like a easy concept and just give it such a good spin.
Mm.
It like this was my first time watching it in full last night.
Oh wow!
Really?
I watched it with Raven. Yeah, I'd seen parts of it. I'd walked in on it or just flipped through it on the channel guide sometimes. And Raven and I sat down and watched it, and it was her first time watching it too. And we were just like, we'll just put it on, see how it is. But we really were sucked into it like right away. It was hilarious. The opening scene is amazing when he's just waiting on his boss to say something. It's like,
I gotta leave. Yeah, he's like whispering.
Yeah. This is not peak Steve Martin in my opinion, because I don't like seeing him be a to be honest. But The Jerk is probably peak Steve Martin for me. But I just gotta say, it's super enjoyable. John Candy's amazing in this movie.
I'd have to go Cheaper by the Dozen for peak Steve Martin.
Oh God, David! Don't even joke like that. The Jerk is gonna hear you, and
just
something
farted
bad's
out of
gonna
your mouth,
happen.
and I could smell it all the way over here.
Oh my goodness. One of the really fun things about this movie is all the, and I mean they're not even cameos. It's like a retroactive cameo. You go back and watch this movie for the nostalgia, or because it is the best, maybe the second best Thanksgiving film. Maybe we'll talk about that later when we do Son-in-Law, hopefully. But there's just the plot takes them on so many different adventures along the road that you see a ton of actors that you recognize from so many things that you also remember. At least we do. Namely Kevin Bacon, who Steve Martin races for the taxi, who you might recognize from Tremors 2. Let's just go with that.
She's having a baby.
Yeah, she's having a baby. You have Larry Hankin, who plays this character named Doobie, who is the junkyard owner from Breaking Bad. He's the one who rigs all that stuff up.
Yeah, that's right.
We also see him in She's Having a Baby. You get cute little Matthew Lawrence as Steve Martin's son, who is Jack Hunter from Boy Meets World. Mad respect.
Yeah.
And this one might not be exciting for a lot of people. Well, hopefully. I mean, Fear's dope, but Gary Riley, who plays the motel thief, he's one of the bad boy crew in Fear. Very exciting.
There's also a Jurassic Park cameo in this movie. Did you guys spot it?
A Jurassic.
Ooh, no, I missed it.
He is the motel clerk at I don't even know where they're at. St. Louis, maybe, when they come in with the car that's already been melted.
Yeah.
And he gives them the $17 and a good watch.
Yeah.
That motel clerk is the lawyer that gets eaten by the T-Rex in Jurassic Park 1.
Oh.
The guy with the untimely bowels.
Gennaro, I think his name is.
Yeah, what a terrible turn of events. It's like getting eaten by a T-Rex is bad, but on the toilet, that's just embarrassing.
On the toilet.
I've always said you're the most vulnerable when you're in the bathroom.
I don't know if I have much to say about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles that you guys have already said. For me, the only reason why I don't have it higher up is that at a certain point, John Candy gets on my nerves. That's how effective the character is. That he's so irritating that I'm irritated. Which I can't blame. I mean, successful job on their part. It's a hilarious movie. But yeah, it's a little, that gets me. And there's something about it. It's like in the third act. It's right around when the car catches on fire that it loses a little bit of steam for me. I'm just waiting like for him just to get back home.
Kind of too much happens, right?
It's a lot that happens,
Yeah.
and it's also just like there's so much will they, won't they stay together, and it's like, man, just leave or stick with John Candy. You know what I do? Just pick one, man. Just
That semi scene, though, can we just agree on how awesome
Yeah.
that semi scene is when they're driving the wrong way and you have that like cartoonish Looney Tunes moment where the skulls show up and he's wearing the devil costume.
Yeah.
He's like, ha ha ha.
That's so funny. And then when those people are trying to tell him you're driving the wrong way, he's like, that guy's drunk. Roll your window up. It's just so funny.
Go home, buddy. You're drunk.
Yeah, I mean,
That movie's great, man.
John Candy is he's a treasure. He is missed.
He really is.
Yeah.
Like, and the best part in that whole semi thing while all this is going on, like the back seat is like still on fire.
I don't think a cigarette can cause leather to catch on fire, though. Do you guys think
I don't
that
know,
it
man.
can?
I've seen some crazy cigarette ash accidents happen in moving vehicles. There was that time our dear friend
Much
Andrew's
like
shirt
Jake.
almost caught on fire.
Oh, yeah.
I could see it burning.
Usually
hole.
all of the cigarette burns were Jake in my hood of my car, in the roof of my car.
Oh, we all have some cigarette burns on the roofs of our cars from Jake.
Oh my god! On purpose he did this, or on accident he did this?
No, every
No.
time. I mean, he's not very aware of his limbs and where they
Oh.
are.
His actions are mostly accidents.
Oh man. Well, anything?
I mean, I think
a
that.
bit of statistics.
Oh, here we go.
Oh
before
yeah,
we leave.
hit us with the stats, stat daddy.
I got some stats. Oh, that's me. Made on a $30 million budget, guys. This thing grossed in total $49.5 million,
Cha-ching.
making $10 million
Cha-ching.
on its opening weekend. Whew, that is fire. I mean, this is a perfect like we were saying, Thanksgiving film, but it's also just like, I mean, the perfect film to take your kids to go see. I mean, there's some things you need to explain to them, I think, in the movie, but like, I mean, this is definitely like
or just
a family
don't explain
holiday
them. Leave
movie.
them confused.
Well, I mean, are you guys down to move on to numero seis?
Yeah, I mean,
What are-
all in all, pretty simple film. Not a whole lot to say about it. It's enjoyable.
Great holiday romp.
Yeah, and I also got to say, like, man, at this point, except for maybe the top two, all of these movies could change on like the day that I'm feeling. Like, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is fantastic, and there's a bunch of other movies of the same caliber. To me, there's only like one or two that are just outright better than this movie, but you know, a list. What is it? But words. Okay, so number 6.
What is it good for?
Number 6 are previously discussed and agreed upon, I guess. 16 Candles. So I think this is kind of interesting. This guy's got 8 movies. We've ranked 3 so far, and none of them were like the teen films. When really, that's what John Hughes got super famous for. And when you think about that, the first 3 that he busted out, 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, and Weird Science. It's like, man, those are 3. When you think of 80s teen comedies, these are like the movies that you think of. And then,
absolutely.
And then Ferris Bueller being
yeah.
right after those 3, yikes. I mean, that's unstoppable. So anyways,
I mean, it's like this man was perfecting a formula, and then Ferris Bueller came out, and he just
yeah.
he threw in that chemical X, you know.
Bum, 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 bum.
Nice Powerpuff reference, Danny.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me give you guys a brief synopsis of 16 Candles in case you haven't seen this one. 16 Candles. We got Molly Ringwald. She's little Samantha Baker, and she's turning 16. This movie takes place on her 16th birthday, and for a variety of reasons, maybe because this is like John Hughes coming out in his writing. The family doesn't recognize her, and they forget her birthday. Then we also have like a B story of Anthony Michael Hall, who is credited as Geek, and him and his loser friends, which include what's this guy's name? I always forget it. As John Cusack. They're on a quest.
And Joan Cusack.
And
Yeah,
Joan.
and Joan
Yeah, you get
Cusack's in here, too.
the whole squad.
They're on a quest to become cool, I guess, ultimately, is what they're trying to get after. I mean, Anthony Michael Hall has way more to do in this movie. But then the other thing is that Molly Ringwald is also interested in Jake, the all-American hunk. But he's
Oh, what a dreamboat.
But he's a senior and she's just a freshman. How could it ever happen? Well, watch the movie and find out. That's 16 Candles. And you know what? Before we talk about 16 Candles, I got something new for the podcast here. I got some interviews. And this first one is about John Hughes talking about teen movies. So I just wanted to, like, if you guys are down, let's listen to this clip and we can discuss that a little bit and maybe some 16 Candles. If that sounds...
Hit us with it, David.
All right, here it comes. Let's see if this works.
16 Candles and said, no, I have to direct this one.
What role does peer pressure play in your characters' lives and in the lives of American teens in general?
I think that it's the single most destructive thing that you'll face. I mean, it is the source of all of those problems. If you bend to it, you will find yourself doing things that you know aren't right. It is so important for you to belong to something that is at that age, as you're trying to identify yourself. Who am I? I mean, where do I fit? How do I belong in all this? That pressure to belong is so enormous that it can be extremely destructive. The smart ones in the schools are the ones that know how to use that pressure and apply it, or they may be using it unknowingly. But it's I felt it. That dare. The whole thing about I dare you. It's as an adult you say, "You're crazy," but as a kid that means something, and it can be really dangerous.
Yeah, so I don't know. I just felt like, man, this is so applicable to this movie. Peer pressure is such like a big thematic tone of 16 Candles. And in case you didn't recognize that.
But the most destructive thing, John Hughes, like more destructive than rock and roll music that's being played too loud or violent video games.
Yeah, it's a little over-exaggerative. And I feel like in his movies, it does feel like it's the most important thing. You know what I mean? Or the most destructive thing is what your peers think of you. But in case you didn't recognize the voice...
But seriously, though, I get it.
that was Kevin Bacon interviewing John Hughes. Which I just thought was funny. Yeah, it was like when they were working on She's Having a Baby.
How funny. But I mean, peer pressure is for reals, I still have that. I get the whole dare thing, If I feel like I'm being called a chicken, I'll show you I'm not a chicken.
Oh, you still get that? Yeah, that's that's the Marty McFly in you.
I've seen that.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
I've seen that. I've witnessed it.
I mean, oh, go ahead, David.
Well, I was just gonna say, let's open the floor up. So I know you guys aren't fans of this movie. What are your opinions on 16 Candles?
I don't think it's a bad movie. You know what I mean? I think it's definitely, like you're saying, quintessential coming of age John Hughes. It's his debut. It's Molly Ringwald's debut. I just think that sometimes I kind of confuse it with Pretty in Pink. And
that has always happened for me as well. I'm glad that you said that because that's always been an issue for me.
It's kind of interchangeable.
I've never seen Pretty in Pink.
Oh, I think it's a much superior movie to this movie.
You should watch it, and then you can be confused too.
One thing I did think was interesting, though, this is Molly Ringwald's debut, and a bit about the production, which was really interesting, is that Allison Sheedy, I believe is her name, who is from Breakfast Club fame, was actually slated to play this character first, but John Hughes stumbled upon Molly Ringwald's headshot, and instantly, he explains her as being his muse. So he pasted a picture of her up at his writing desk and then just nailed out all of the screenplay. Wrote the complete amount of 16 Candles based on her image. So it's a bit interesting how things like that play out. It's like it was made for this.
Yeah.
She was made for this role.
Written for the actress, who at the time was only 15 too. Molly Ringwald's very young in this movie. And you were saying it's her, is it her debut movie? I don't know. I didn't look that up.
I believe so. I believe it's her film debut.
I can double check while we're doing this. Why
fact checked anything? Just say things and then believe in them.
Well, I guess as the defender, the fan of 16 Candles, what do I really like about the movie? I like all of the interesting relationships in this movie. I think that we get a lot of very bold characters who share, at the beginning they have one relationship, and by the end of the movie they've completely changed over the course of this 1 day and a half. So for instance, we got Long Duck Dong, who is the foreign exchange, or we were trying to figure out how this worked. He doesn't go to the school, he's just visiting from China. Like, I don't know what the...
Yeah.
Well, no, he's not. He doesn't live there. He lives with the grandparents. He's not staying with, like, Molly Ringwald's family.
So he's going to school.
So while the grandparents are visiting for the wedding, he's also attending this wedding with them.
Well, at the beginning...
Pretty problematic.
He's with the grandparents, and he's just, like, the sweetest, most innocent boy. And then by the end of the movie, he's been corrupted by American youth. He's just, like, totally changed. But my favorite one is between... Anthony Michael Hall, the geek, and Jake, the older guy, because they're just like at the beginning polar opposites. And if anything, every time that Jake talks to Anthony Hall at the beginning of the movie, or Anthony Michael Hall, sorry, he just he intimidates him. Like he's like scared to even talk to him. He thinks he's gonna get beat up or something. But there's like a scene in the movie where they're just cleaning up after this terrible party, which we could get into the weird stuff that goes on there, but They just have such an interesting relationship. They become like really close friends all of a sudden. They like count on each other and stuff. So I don't know. I think character-wise, I don't know if any John Hughes movie has more growth in a single picture. Usually the characters are pretty static. I mean, there's a couple that have big changes, and I guess The Breakfast Club, they all change a little bit, right? That's the point of it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna point out.
Yeah, but
sure.
it's a movie of growth, and it's literally about also getting growing up. So it's
older.
Both.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I do think it's like we say with a lot of the things we review on this movie podcast. Comedy doesn't age well, and there are a lot of problematic scenes in this movie. Also, I've heard that the what's his name, Getty Watanabe scenes, the Long Duck Dong scenes, apparently plagued the Asian American population of U.S. for many decades.
I mean, they play a gong like every time he shows up on screen.
Yeah, at the beginning.
It's very problematic.
It's pretty racist. There's no other way to look at that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously it was a different time. It's hard to say. But that definitely doesn't sit well now. And you can't change that part about a movie. But, I mean, other than that, I mean, the movie's good and watchable. I mean, at least as part as feedback goes, I don't know if we spoke numbers yet, but this guy's got a 83% on Rotten Tomatoes. Sits at a 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb. Made on $6.5 million, grossing in a total $23.7 million.
That's
making just
highly successful.
$5 million in its open weekend alone. It made all the money back in its first weekend.
Dude, that's
insane.
I mean, it's the first of its kind like this.
I mean, yeah, it's a good movie. It's got lots of good stuff. I really like all the family stuff. The little brother's like the perfect little turd. You know what I mean? He nails it. John Hughes does the gag where he's pretending to like smoke with like a snack, which he also does with Curly Sue when they're like playing cards. John Hughes thinks it's really funny when kids pretend to smoke, and that's because it is really funny when kids pretend to smoke.
That or
what did he have, like a Slim Jim or something?
Or he was still working for Philip Morris. He was still collecting that check. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
John Hughes is responsible for an entire generation being hooked on tobacco.
There was something else. Oh, well, you can't talk about problematic scenes without getting into this a little bit, but totally uncool of Jake sending home his intoxicated girlfriend with just some strange man, who in this case was like an quote-unquote innocent younger boy or whatever. But still, very problematic scene, especially when he convinces his drunk girlfriend that he's not who he says he is and that he's someone else. This would not be made today. Let's just leave it at that, I think, right?
He like straight up tells Anthony Michael Hall like, "Oh, she's totally out of it, man. Have a good time."
Yes, that's like his exact words.
Like, that's no bueno.
No. Whew. No good. But there's also part of me that says when you watch an 80s comedy, you got to be ready for like the raunchiness of it. Like women are treated differently in 80s comedies for sure.
Oh yeah.
You think
I mean, this is the same instance with one of these other movies coming up. Sorry.
Yeah, like Weird Science has a scene that's not as bad, but kind of similar. And then you got movies like Porky's and things like that, which are just straight out gross.
Well, I think that was part of apparently this movie played like a staunch, a polarization between teen dramas because of Porky's. Like there was a picturization of teen life when Porky's came out, which I think was right around the same time as 16 Candles. And then 16 Candles came out and kind of gave it more depth and more depth and gravity to what like teens are experiencing.
It's funny to think of 16 Candles as like a progressive movie, but when you compare it to other movies of the time, it's like, yeah, I guess it was more thoughtful. It was more considerate.
Yeah, Porky's is rough. That's a rough one.
That's a problematic movie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're ripe to move on to 5. Let's keep this train rolling.
How
Chugga,
exciting!
chugga, chugga. Hue Express. Here we go.
Oh well, this is 4, right?
No, this is 5 because we haven't discussed.
No, I'm sorry.
Weird
this is
Science.
4.
Dun, dun,
This is
dun,
4.
dun.
This is 4. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, 16 Candles.
When
is
did
5.
we? Oh, we're talking about Weird Science.
Yeah, we're ranking. We're ranking in order. So, what did you have for your number 4, Danny? What was your?
Yes.
That's right.
Is it weird? Is that what you have?
No. My number 4 before we changed things around, was actually. Oh wait.
Oh.
I think I forgot.
If you count from the top, Danny, it's the 4th one.
That's what I was doing. Okay, I just want to make sure we're doing that right. My number 4 was Uncle Buck.
Ooh.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's what I also have for number 4, Danny.
Hey.
I have.
Which makes me think the rest of our list is the same. You know what I mean?
I
I'm
think
pretty
so.
sure the rest of our list is the same.
That's so funny. I guess technically next, because of how things shifted, Weird Science would be next for me. I had Uncle Buck as 3. I was just so surprised by Uncle Buck. I mean, it was just delightful.
That's a
It's
good
so pleasant.
I'd never seen it before.
It's one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Same. This is my first viewing of it.
You know, I would argue, and if I'm outnumbered, whatever, but I would say Uncle Buck's better than Weird Science. I know you guys are big Weird Science fans, but Weird Science to me is at least a B tier John Hughes movie. It's not top 3. But I mean,
Those without context, David has given us crap about Weird Science as John Hughes pantheon.
Whoa, hang
for
on.
Years.
Let's
Yeah, this is a fight that's been going on for a long time.
This is the wrong perspective. You guys have been giving me crap about not liking Weird Science as much as you guys for years. So that's
Yes.
really what's going on here.
Yeah, that's one way of saying that.
You
for
guys
sure.
are bizarre Weird Science. I mean, maybe there's a bunch of people who are super into this movie. I didn't know this. But just to set the record straight, okay? In these years leading up to this podcast, the discussion has been that Weird Science is the best John Hughes movie. This is what has been brought to the table by these men that I share this podcast with. Okay, so just so everyone's
I don't remember
clear.
Well,
saying
that's just to anger you, David, and it's the best.
Well, then you know what happens. I fight for it being number 4. I mean, it's just not as good as Uncle Buck, guys.
That's cool. If you want, we can vote on it.
If you guys want to vote and I'm turned down, that's fine. But I just want to make sure it's clear that
I will say, having recently watched Uncle Buck and never watched it before, I could concede that it is much better than Weird Science.
let's do it, Danny.
But
let's turn the pages together.
Nostalgia is a hell of a drug. Nostalgia is a hell of a drug. And I will say that it has a hard presence in my mind because Weird Science has been there for me for so many years.
So if you
And
can,
I'll even back that up by saying this is not a new experience for me. Like I've seen Uncle Buck like repeatedly. This is a film that I know and love.
But- Danny,
but for me, it still lands right below Weird Science.
if you can recognize that it's nostalgia driven, Danny, then your obligation as a reviewer is to put nostalgia aside, like you asked us to put nostalgia aside for the Warriors. You
He
should
didn't
do the
ask
same.
us to do anything.
in a
He just told us we were
principled decision.
wrong.
to recognize that Uncle Buck is a finer film and deserves what really is an inconsequential spot ranked higher than Weird Science. And
You know
that's
what?
Danny, but do you have to? What you really have to ask yourself is: are you really a man of principle, or are you petty?
You know, these are all fine points, and I'm glad that we can come together and have a lively debate in this beautiful country that we have to call our own. And what I will say is, having debated both of these well-debated topics in my mind,
You sound like you're running for a Republican nomination right now. We've heard a lot of good ideas out on the stage tonight.
Saying a lot of nothing.
I enjoy that we
This is
have
the
this
classic
dialogue going.
pivot. Yeah. I will say that one thing I can put above Uncle Buck at this point is Weird Science by Oingo Boingo.
Okay. I mean, if you know,
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-da-da.
I will take the hit for Oingo Boingo. I'll do it any day of the week. Danny Elfman calls.
Do it for if not this Danny, do it for Danny Elfman.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's Danielle.
Okay, I'll concede. I'll concede.
Weird.
Favorable debate. Okay, so here we are, Uncle Buck, and who's talking about Uncle Buck? Danny.
I believe Danny's giving it to us.
What's your
Oh man,
synopsis
I'm
of
so
Uncle
stoked
Buck?
about this, man. I mean, I already said that I this was my first time watching this movie. I was a little reluctant because I was just like, I don't know, it doesn't look that great. This is peak John Candy. This is the best film I feel like I've ever seen him in, next to even his small cameo in Home Alone, which was added late in the film apparently. But man, this movie's amazing. Let's just get a little synopsis going here. We got Bachelor. It's very brief. Bachelor and all-around slob Buck babysits his brother's rebellious teenage daughter and her cute younger brother and sister after their grandfather has an untimely medical visit. So the parents got to go out of town. They don't have anyone to watch. So they call up old Uncle Buck. He's kind of a slob.
Yeah, he's the last resort.
Yeah.
Like they are out of options.
And also a bit estranged. Like the family hasn't really had in contact. The kids don't even really remember him. The younger ones don't even know who he is.
Even since the wedding, apparently.
Yeah.
What a scene. Can we just talk about that scene? There's a scene where Uncle Buck is in their house and he's going through their photo albums a bit. He's kind of just checking out everything in the house while they're gone. He goes through their wedding photo album and he sees a picture of his brother and his wife, his sister-in-law, and I think their father or whoever else is in there, but he kind of touches the picture and he's like, something's off, and he pulls it out and it's folded and the other side is him in the picture, and it's just so touching.
Yeah, that hit pretty hard. That was pretty rough.
Ouch. I mean, God, what you can say so much more about this film. I mean, baby Macaulay Culkin kills it in this movie.
This is like proto Home Alone, essentially. And John Hughes even talks about that in another interview clip that I had actually, but I'll just paraphrase it for you. We already listened to one interview. But he's just saying he usually worked with teens. He wasn't used to working with child actors. And then when he got Macaulay Culkin on set, he just realized how talented this guy was and the range that old Mac has. So after they finished up this movie, he was like, okay, we need to do a movie where you're the star. And then we have Home Alone, which is, a classic, a cinema classic.
It's a pity that
yeah.
that John Hughes didn't direct Home Alone, because then we could be talking about Home Alone right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is a bummer.
What are you gonna do?
But I mean,
And
the way that
even
he
next to Macaulay Culkin, who I guess as cuteness, he is a prodigy. You know what I mean? Gabby, God, what's her name? I wrote it down here somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Gabby Hoffman, who plays Maisie, the other little girl, she does a stellar job right next to him. She does not get left behind at all. Both of those two, they're the most awesome comedy duo under 4 feet.
They are. I mean, I love Mac's just delivery of his deadpan, just pure comic gold. You know what I mean? He's just grilling him. I love the scene where he's just asking rapid fire Uncle Buck questions about himself, why aren't you married? Why don't you have kids? It's a long story. It's a longer story. It's so charming. This movie's amazing.
What I like too about delivery wise, anyways, John Candy, and whenever he's threatening Tia's boyfriend, whatever the boyfriend is, the one
A bug.
Bug. There we go. Yeah, that is just hilarious. John Candy comes off as so crazy. And
Dude, the hatchet thing in the car. Oh, my
I
goodness.
love it. I love it. It was so good. I mean, we were talking about problematic scenes from like 16 Candles, but man, Bug is a bad boy, and that whole pressure thing is really weird. But
I think it is important to point out that in this case, it is portrayed in a negative light. Like in Uncle Buck, it's portrayed in a way where we're not supposed to sympathize with him. We're supposed to think it's disgusting. Whereas in Weird Science, it's problematic because these are like the characters we're rooting for.
They're the heroes.
Yeah, that's weird. That's what's
But that's why we'll get to it when we get to it. But that's why Weird Science gives you an even worse pair. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Very
dude, the
true.
Weird Science stuff is okay. We'll get there.
Yeah, we will. Excuse me 1 second. I gotta play with this light really quick.
No, you're good.
Continue.
well, I was going to say this is the first directed, written, and produced by Hughes, which was apparently under like a multi-picture agreement deal with Universal Pictures.
Oh, okay.
So this is the first he actually written, directed, and produced, which is really interesting.
That's 3 paychecks, man. That sounds
Hit
good.
it out of the park. I mean, hit it way out of the park. His voice comes through in this, in the writing in this movie so well.
Oh,
And man, people dressed so dorky.
yeah, the costumes are really
80s.
dorky. Hey, I don't know if you came across this, but Joe Pesci was actually considered as the role for Uncle Buck.
Ooh,
But
I was actually going to get into that.
he turned it down for I think Lethal Weapon 2 or something. But that to me, like, it could have worked, man. It might have worked really well.
Exactly. And actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I actually wrote down the list of people they considered.
Ooh.
And it's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible because there are people you can be like, whoa, this actually probably would have been good too. And there's some that's just like, no. Why were you even thinking like that?
Ooh, hit us with
So
that.
let's go through it really quick.
Yeah, hit us with that list.
Apparently actors such as Danny DeVito, Tom Cruise,
Ugh.
No.
Robin Williams,
Ooh.
Tom Hanks,
That could have been interesting.
80s Tom
Jack
Hanks,
Nicholson,
too. Wow.
Michael Keaton, Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, John Goodman, Ed O'Neill, and like you said, Joe Pesci were all considered before it went to John Candy.
Weird.
Yeah. I mean, some of those could have been a pretty good movie too, but some of those are like, what the heck were you thinking?
Yeah.
Like Tom Cruise for
Cruise?
Uncle Buck?
No.
Even Ed
And
O'Neill.
at that time, he would have been like pretty young too, like
Yeah.
relatively. Just this tiny little uncle. How is that guy supposed to intimidate anything?
right?
He'd be, like,
Especially
barely
up next
taller
to
than
Bug, they
Macaulay
would have had to put him
Culkin.
on like platforms and stuff. You know what I mean?
We somehow haven't brought this up at all, but this one really got to me. I feel like the ending of this movie comes out of nowhere. Like, we're just trotting along, we're having a good time, and then it's like, the parents are home, Uncle Buck's leaving, and the movie just like screeches to a halt. But
Oh, and he's getting married.
yeah, but all of John Hughes' movies, like not all of them, but like 90% of them, end on a freeze frame of the character, like of whatever characters in the movie. Yeah, the famous one from Breakfast Club. But Uncle Buck does it. Man, I think it's almost all of them. I think maybe
I think it is all of them.
I don't think Ferris Bueller does.
Oh. No, but at least Planes, Trains, and Automobiles does.
Well, no, Ferris
Uncle
Bueller
Buck definitely does.
Ferris Bueller does. He's leaning back like this. How crazy!
Yeah, and it freeze frames and it fades out.
Yeah. How?
But you're right. In Uncle Buck, it definitely happened very abruptly.
Yeah, Uncle
It
Buck.
was like, all right, well, we'll see you all later. And then he smiles and then end of movie.
Yeah, he pretty much should have just been like, "Hey, everybody, thanks for coming out." You know what I mean? It just felt like that. Just like, boom, it's done. But yeah, part of me thinks Planes, Trains, and Automobiles might be a better movie, but something about Uncle Buck connected
You
with
think
me.
so?
Maybe because it was so fresh to me. I was
Yeah.
kind of feeling that. I had a hard time ranking the John Candy ones. But looking at the numbers and everything online, it seems like most people would agree that Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is better than Uncle Buck. But
Yeah.
I just think
it's higher rated.
it might be little Macaulay Culkin. It might be what Frank's talking about, this adorable little pair. Because it is so charming. It is so charming.
I mean, if if John Candy had lived longer, I think that John Hughes could have written even more movies with him, because I feel like there are muses and actors that really take on a writer's voice, and that which he writes for. John Candy was that person. Macaulay Culkin was that person for him. Molly Ringwald. And, you know, they could really take that and just ride with it. And I think that if he'd been around longer, it would have had more of a career with it. But you're right. Like, I was very surprised when I was watching Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, because it has a much higher critics rating in both categories. I mean, from both aggregators. But it's also, I just enjoyed Uncle Buck so much more. I wasn't tired the entire time. There was a third act slump, like we were saying, in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles for me. But in Uncle Buck, I mean, I was just enjoying every moment of it. It was amazing.
Oh, yeah. From the get-go.
From the get-go.
From start to finish. Solid film.
Agreed.
I mean, that's all I pretty much have to say, except the parents kind of suck, like, a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they need the cool uncle, like, to be around a little bit. All the kids are dope. Like, everybody does a great acting job. Even like the God, what's her name? The teenage one. The girl who plays Tia does a really good job of being like a super unlikable like teenage girl.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
you eye
she
roll
sucks,
for sure.
So she did a great job at sucking.
I was just saying before, Frank, how dorky the parents' outfits are, and how dorky people like dressed in the 80s for sure.
So dorky, man. The dad makes so many. What's his name? Bob.
Yeah.
Makes so many like stupid. He's constantly just like, oh, I'm a goofy guy. Oh, whoa.
His stupid glasses are like the size of his face and stuff.
Yeah.
The mom's mullet is just so distracting whenever she's on screen, for sure.
Yeah, the hairstyles are rough.
Even when like Buck goes to that house party, and like everyone's just wearing these whack like 80s rebel clothes and some pork pie hat or something like that. It's just like, it's so distracting.
Bug's like trench coat with the turtleneck. Like, I really hated that the whole time with the stupid little hat.
Just to speak a little bit about the feedback, if I can.
Yeah.
Uncle Buck has 61% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is just a travesty. 7 out of 10 on IMDb. Made on $15 million. Y'all, this movie grossed $80 million total.
That's disgusting.
Right?
That's
nasty. That's like 6 times its worth.
It's gangbusters.
That's a pretty good day at the office.
Good day at the old movie office. Well, I think it's an appropriate time to kick it to number 3. Let's turn it up a notch. We're in the top 3 now. Frank, what?
God, I'm so excited to be number 3. It's super dope. Here we go. Weird Science is what I have for my number 3 slot. Danny, you also have Weird Science for your number 3 slot. Very exciting, correct?
Sure do.
Yeah,
sure
nice. And David, I'm sorry, man.
Weird.
I mean, it's okay. If anything, I'll take this opportunity to just voice my ambivalence for Weird Science. But you, by all means, you guys kick it off. I don't want to put a rain on the parade.
I mean, Frank, unload on us, dude. Give us about Weird Science.
Let us know.
Man.
Get ready for the parade, boys. Weird Science came out in 1985, as discussed earlier. A really good year for John Hughes, man. That guy must have been having some dope parties, like out on some big old boats in 1986. You know what I mean? 6.6 on IMDb, 58% on Rotten Tomatoes. But what are you gonna do? I disagree with the aggregates all the time. Starring John Hughes' favorite Anthony Michael Hall as Gary Wallace, geek number 1. We have Ian Mitchell-Smith playing Wyatt Donnelly, geek number 2.
Wow.
The quite beautiful Kelly LeBrock as their creation Lisa, and Bill Paxton as Chet.
God, he's amazing.
Ooh, what a perfect role for Bill Paxton.
I love
Weird
that.
Science follows 2 losers, and you pretty much get the idea, like, these 2 guys are each other's like only friends in the world. You don't really see them talk to anybody else at their school. That's like, these guys have spent way too much time with each other. They're complete losers. They're frustrated with this fact. and somehow come to the conclusion that they're going to, because they're watching Frankenstein on TV. That's how they come to the conclusion that they're going to like make a lady a simulation on Wyatt's computer, and that is going to teach them how to interact with ladies. Things go wrong real fast because they hack into like, it looks like an Air Force base of some time to get like more computing power, which is a horrible idea. Things go super awry and they like make a lady. they make an actual like tangible woman
from a Barbie doll.
And it's like a young teenage like loser's ideal woman. So things get questionable pretty fast right off of the bat. I can see all of David's points. They are rational points on why this movie isn't as good as some people may say it is. At the same time, it's way better than that. It is just like a crazy fun time. It's totally 100% off of the wall.
Yeah.
It's John Hughes' most outlandish directed by film.
This movie is bonkers.
It is totally bonkers. You know what I mean? Bill Paxton gets turned into like a giant human-sized pile of feces, if you will. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of movie we're dealing with here. Still, somehow, after watching this movie over and over and over again, I hold this movie in high regard. It is a fantastic time. If you've never seen Weird Science, I highly recommend it. It's great.
I mean, it just, for me, it stands out. It stands out because it's like the weirdest entry in John Hughes's like movie catalog, and it's unlike other films completely. It's not as serious, not nearly as serious as any of his other comedy dramas. It's outlandish, and it's straight up. It's almost like a fever dream that like skews the line between what is real and what is unreal. And I mean, I know he breaks the fourth wall quite a bit in some of his movies, and he has like Looney Tunes moments. I mean, that is amped up to pretty much 10 in this movie, and somehow it just works so well.
Like, it's crazy to think that the same dude wrote and directed this movie as like She's Having a Baby. You know what I mean? Like, these are two completely different movies.
That's funny because I think they're probably,
and it's just so fun.
For me, those are the two that are like the most similar, or Weird Science and She's Having a Baby, in the weirdest connection. Just in that he's kind of going in whatever direction he wants, and that the scenes that are happening are a little nonsensical because everything else is grounded in reality, right? There's nothing supernatural or even anything like in people's imaginations that are other than how is Ferris Bueller pulling off all these wild pranks. That's not grounded in reality.
Yeah, I mean, and they break into musical in some of the movies too.
Well, I think just She's Having a Baby. I don't think there's a song and dance in any of the other ones, is there?
No, there's just the parade sequence in Ferris Bueller that's a little too coordinated, but
well,
there's literally like a dance team.
Oh, that's true. That's very coordinated. Weird Science. I mean,
I feel like Danny and I can't say enough good things about it. What we really need are like your points at this point. Like, obviously it's problematic. Like, why don't you give us why don't you give us the
we should also note that your wife also loves this movie.
Yeah, she does, and you know what? She also loves Spice World.
Yeah, you're the outlier.
You know what I mean? If she likes bad movies, that's fine. That's okay with me. She likes the second Bridget Jones' Diary. I mean, she acknowledges it's not that great, but she enjoys it. So check it out. First off, the Frankenstein thing. This movie is essentially Frankenstein, except there's sexual frustration of adolescence. That's pretty much our trade-off. The scene of them hacking in... Okay, first off, none of this makes any sense to any degree whatsoever. Whereas... And that's okay. You can have stuff that just makes flat out no sense. But it's right at the beginning, and the whole thing is like, how is any of this even... It's like, not just... They had to hack first. They had to hack into...
I mean, did you hear how many keys he was
hang on. They had to hack into the Air Force to... For what? The Air Force knows how to clone women? And then second, like, they get whatever
for the nuclear
information
power
they needed and they made a 3D model on what?
From a Barbie doll.
And then they programmed in her artificial intelligence just by typing in words about how she was. What is any of this movie? And then that's not enough. It's created by lightning. So then it's a supernatural thing. So first it's like we have to use science to make this woman. But none of that plan would have even done anything unless
They have to use
lightning storm and they scanned in photos they cut out of magazines. The whole thing's ridiculous. Not to mention,
Yeah, I was gonna make sure to bring up the scanner if you forgot it. That is it's totally ridiculous. It's so beautiful.
It's not that they have to use science, it's that they have to use
weird
science.
Hey, but then the other thing is too is like all the hacking scenes. It just looks like War Games, which came out 2 years earlier, that did it way better. It just did it way better. It's like when Frank was. It's like when we were watching Curly Sue, and you're like, oh, well, this is just reverse Pretty Woman. That's like what the beginning of Weird Science is for me. It's like, oh, okay, so they took Frankenstein, but just put a hot chick in it, and then put the beginning of Weird Science in it too. I guess I don't know, but whatever. Then the other thing is, and I know this is where we probably have our biggest disagreement. I just can't tolerate Bill Paxton in this movie. I just don't like
so
Chet.
good. Oh,
I know he's supposed to be
Yeah,
annoying. I understand that.
Yeah.
But it's so much to the point where I don't even like looking at his face. Bill Paxton's face is just unsettling to me. And particularly this movie.
but what?
Yeah, I'm not buying it. I mean, okay, but let's flip it. The things I do like about this movie. I really like the relationship between our two young men. And I like that there is an air of them being like respectful to women, even though that they're objectifying women at the beginning of the movie. There is a loyalty to Lisa by the end of the movie. But Lisa's also there as like a guru. You know what I mean? She's there to guide them and to teach them the ways of the world, and also to maybe have like underage sexual relations with these boys. Let's be honest. That's weird, guys. Also, this dude, we looked this up. Ian Mitchell Smith is like 15 in this movie, and there's a kissing scene between Wyatt and Lisa where we're getting some intense tongue. I mean, like, watch the kissing scene in Weird Science, everybody. It's crazy. But then the craziest part is she's like 25 and he's like 15 years old. And they're going at it, everyone. It's so awkward. It'd be even more awkward if you reverse the roles. Like if you replace this scene with the kissing scene in 16 Candles, and it's like Molly Ringwald with this man who's clearly not a teenager. It's creepy. It's real creepy.
Yeah, there's nothing I can say to defend that.
No.
There is a double standard, so that is technically, I guess, the only way you could make it worse. Because it's like the kiss is it's not light by any means at all.
No.
I mean, just like neither of the boys. I don't think the point of her was sexual relations, and that never happened. Mostly because Wyatt like passed out when they tried to go for it. But yeah, that kiss is rough. Like watching that scene, it's like, ooh.
I feel like some of it is kind of like what you were touching on, David, where it's a little bit implied that, you know, Wyatt does kind of want to share in the same revelry that most of his other classmates or other people should be going through at the time, and Gary probably more so. But I think Wyatt functions as like a difference between Gary in that moment, because he wants to just do what's normal, but what society is kind of telling them is normal is that 16-year-old boys should be doing this or something like that, or you should be at this point, you know what I mean? And I feel like Wyatt's just kind of going along with Gary's plan a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Like he has the means to do these things, but does he really want to do it? No, I think Wyatt just wants to play chess. Wyatt's definitely the more suppressed of both of them.
Wyatt is the Cameron in this equation, easily.
Yeah. And then could we also just talk about Anthony Michael Hall's ridiculous and just completely cringeworthy African-American voice? You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
When he's talking the jive, you know what I mean? It is so distasteful.
It is.
Yeah, and you know what?
strange.
It's even like, because he does it also in Breakfast Club.
Yeah, he does.
But it's definitely even cringier in Weird Science, and maybe it's just like a length thing because they like go for it. You know what I mean? He's doing that bit for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's a when you think about how long Weird Science is, like 10% of it is a racist bit that's just like real bad and not going anywhere.
It just keeps going. Yeah, I would say that's definitely my least favorite part of the movie.
Yeah. Which is why I'm saying.
But yeah, you're
Buck.
right. It does come back.
Anyway.
In Breakfast Club.
Yeah, it does come back in Breakfast Club. But it's so brief in Breakfast Club that it doesn't bother me as much. If anything, in Breakfast Club, I never even caught
Racism's okay with David as long as you just get it over with really quick.
It's context. In Breakfast Club, there's not any black people. You don't get that feeling. You just think, oh, he's doing a weird voice.
Nowhere in the entire movie.
And in this movie,
well, it's clearly like the exact same jive voice. I feel like it's racist to say, like, it feels racist to say, like, there were no black people around. Like, what's the harm?
Well,
what I mean?
What I mean is, like, you hear that voice in Breakfast Club, and he says, like, one line in that voice. If you're, like, 12 years old watching that movie, which is, like, the age that most people watch Breakfast Club or whatever, that's probably not even crossing your mind. You're not like, oh, that's a racist caricature. It's just like, oh, Anthony Michael Hall is making a weird voice.
Unless you're, like...
But when you watch Weird Science...
Unless you're like a 12-year-old in like Alabama.
Yeah, then maybe. But when you watch Weird Science...
Yeah, then maybe you're like...
There's no escaping exactly what is happening in that scene. And it's like...
uber clear.
Yeah. But I mean, Oingo Boingo, you know?
Oingo Boingo?
I mean,
Kills it.
the theme slaps.
It
like,
does.
my
Theme
goodness.
slaps. The
So-
intro slaps on screen. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a very amazing movie. I mean, I'm just going to talk about it a little bit in terms of this. I'm going to be stat daddy
Give it
for
to
a
us.
second here.
Give us the
if I may.
numbers. Danny, the numbers.
I am. Danny Two Hands, the number man. This movie was made on only $7.5 million, y'all. This movie grossed $39 million.
That's nice.
Ooh.
That
It is
really
a
nice.
huge box office success and a cult classic favorite. Although it is divisive, like you were saying, David, where a lot of people in the John Hughes catalog do not agree that it is part of his best.
And we've seen that here today.
How delightful. I'm so pleased.
I'm really glad that it's at number 3. I really am.
And I mean, the best news is like all the fighting's done with because I think we all pretty much know how the rest of this list is going to go at this point.
We're about to find
I
out.
don't know because I have a
Like,
feeling
obviously,
I know
we're talking about Ferris Bueller next, right?
Am I number 2?
Are we?
I believe you are number 2, David.
For number 2, I have The Breakfast Club.
I knew it.
The
I knew it.
The Breakfast Club sandwich. What about y'all? What do you got for number 2?
I agree
Ferris
with you
Bueller's Day
100%, David.
Danny, you have
Really?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
I do have Ferris Bueller's Day Off at number 2. Maybe it's just a personal preference.
You know,
For me.
they're very different movies. So
They are very different movies. I feel like I can't compare apples to oranges.
Yeah. These aren't a straight comparison for sure.
One's very whimsical, and one is very real.
Yeah.
And one is clearly a dramedy, and one is a... the line of reality is very skewed for a narrative in Ferris Bueller's
I
Day
don't know
Off.
if I agree with. I think we're supposed to believe everything happens in Ferris Bueller. I don't think anything's supposed to be. That's the point. That's the point. Is that Ferris is larger than life. You know what I mean? He's the man who can get away with
Yeah.
anything.
I kind of hate that, though. I kind of want him to lose.
So you're,
That's
you're
just
using
your-
the genie argument.
What'd you say there, Frank?
So you're taking the genie argument.
I was just.
Ferris'
yeah.
sister.
That's your midlife crisis sneaking up on you. That's what that means. When you start identifying with
Cameron.
the dean of students, then
Oh,
that's how you know you're.
no,
doing
I
well.
think I identify with Cameron. I feel really bad for Cameron because Cameron does things.
Well, hang on.
Does what he's supposed to.
Hang on. Before
Oh,
we
well,
get to
yeah,
Ferris
yeah,
Bueller,
yeah. Hold on, we'll get there.
we gotta decide here. Frank, are you willing to budge on Breakfast Club? For me, this is almost set in stone, unless someone's got juice.
No, I
here.
mean, I probably even agree with some of Danny's points. Like, even the Cameron thing, I agree with. Like, he's treated poorly. I still think Ferris Bueller's, like, if we were gonna watch a movie and it was these two, I would pick Ferris Bueller. You know what I mean? Just enjoy it a little bit more. We're at the top of a list of a lot of really like awesome, fun movies. But Ferris Bueller just pulls ahead of Breakfast Club just a little bit for me.
I mean, I feel as though Ferris Bueller, I mean, it really could go either way for me. I just personally prefer The Breakfast Club more, but I have no problem with relinquishing it for number 2 spot. I'm not going to be problematic about it. I definitely had more of a stance to take with Weird Science than I do with Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, I feel like all the vigor is off the table now. Well, let's go ahead and go forward with Breakfast Club then. So Breakfast Club, the 1985, as Frank put, dramedy, a genre also made famous by Judd Apatow. This feels very Apatow-y to me. You can tell Apatow watched a bunch of John Hughes movies. So what's the story of the Breakfast Club? Well, there's these 5 teenagers, and they all have Saturday school, except one of them's lying about it. And then, you know what? They're all just the golden stereotype of high school cliques, one represented from each. The jock, the loser, the geek, the preppy girl, and the basket case, or whatever it is. And prom queen, I think is what they call her. But anyway, these 5 kids are there. They don't necessarily like each other. They don't necessarily even want to talk to each other. But we also have sort of the, I guess, antagonist of this movie, Paul Gleason's Richard Vernon. He's the principal. And basically, they sit in this room all day, and they explore each other's lives, as weird as that sounds. But Breakfast Club is without a plot. There's no structure to Breakfast Club. It is very much free form. It's very much like, we're setting these characters in this room and let's see what happens. And most of that is led by...
And they'll be here until the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Most of this
what
is...
detention is, you know what I mean?
Yeah, essentially, right? And it's pretty much led by Judd T. Nelson. Or Judd T. Nelson. I always add the T. Judd Nelson.
How nice for you just like coach so much that you want to get Craig T.
Craig T. Nelson. That's exactly what it is. So Judd Nelson's John Bender. He kind of like leads this movie, at least in my opinion.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
He leads so many of the scenes and the dialogue. I
got you for 2 whole years, Bender.
2 years, Buster.
2 whole years.
But it's like when this is a movie I've seen hundreds of times, and that's like no exaggeration. It feels like.
Yeah, same here.
And when I saw this as a kid, I remember thinking, because I saw this before I even went into high school, I remember thinking like, this just seems so intense. Like, is this really what high school is like? Is this like, this seems crazy. And then as an adult, I have a different relationship with this movie now. I haven't seen it in a while. I haven't seen it since I was like in high school probably. But it seems so overdramatic when you're almost 30. It seems like, what are you guys worrying about? None of this really even matters. But at the same time, that is like the essence of being a teenager. Having these really intense emotions, having all these feelings that like, this is life ending, or this is like world altering, whatever is going on to me right now. So yeah, I don't know. John Hughes did a great job, man. This is a time capsule of a movie, I feel like. And I think even though it is it's a bit cliched, it's a bit on the nose, I think that audiences for generations are going to keep watching this. And obviously that's already happened because we're talking about it and we're all born in the 90s.
Yeah, one of the things that's got going for it is it's not super referenced to the time. Like obviously with the music choices and the style and how cute and young Emilio Estevez is, like it's obviously from that time, but it's not grounded in that decade. You wouldn't have to be born then to understand what's going on in this movie.
You could be in that detention today. Like that Saturday detention, exactly how it looks and how it feels, that could go on like this Saturday if you were in high school.
And I think you all are hitting a good point on saying, it is without plot. And that's also what doesn't tie it to a time period. You know what I mean? It's 5 people getting to learn each other. And these 5 people, maybe they exist in not the exact same capacity as what there was back then. Maybe there's all these different cliques now. But it's still very resonant that not everyone hangs out with each other in high school. Mm-hmm. And if they just got in a room and got to talk to each other, they might find what their differences and similarities are. You know what I mean? And grow from that.
Which unfortunately will be something that is like always relevant for like any like age or dispute or
Yeah,
anything.
even
you know
outside
what I mean?
of high school,
If
for
they
sure.
just like sat down and had a discussion, maybe things would be easier. But unfortunately, that probably just won't happen.
Yeah, it's idealistic for sure. This movie, like you were saying, David, I've also seen this movie a multitude of times. I mean, exponentially, and it seems to just be on TV here and there every now and then.
If it's on
and I
TV,
just fall on
you
to
got to
it.
sit down and watch however much is left of that movie. It's like, I want to watch Breakfast Club right now.
Yeah,
It's definitely one of those like, okay, well, cool, here we go.
and it's one of the best moments in cinematic history. I mean, moments. It's just like a compilation of some of the best cinematic moments in movie history, where you just get sucked in to some of these sequences. And like we're speaking about in some of his later work, like you guys were saying, like when she's having a baby and stuff like that, none of that's very prevalent here in terms of like experimental film techniques or anything. They're very stationary shots.
Yeah.
And it's very much like, let's just shoot a blank, boring camera shot and get these people to interact.
I think
You know what
the
I mean?
only exception to that, because I agree, most of the movie is very flat, but we get that really famous 360-degree pan while the kids are all talking. It looks like the beginning of Reservoir Dogs. That's like that's one that sticks out to my mind. But other than that, yeah, it's pretty,
Also the dancing scene.
the dancing. They do a lot of stuff there.
That's iconic.
Which,
like
I
the
mean,
whole
how many
moving
times have we
shot.
seen that dance done by some, talent show or whatever? I'm trying to think about rewatching the movie. I do got to say, I already kind of referenced this, but I didn't realize how much of this movie is just Judd Nelson, just like talking and ranting about things and being like so upset and angry. But also, there's no John Hughes movie that's like this intense. Like the things that Judd Nelson is saying. I mean, and the saddest part is that it's really true that his character, like with his abusive home life and you see him like lashing out in school and everything, that's just all factual, and that still happens.
It's another
I mean-
banner freaking year at the Bender household.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, and Anthony Michael Hall gets in on like, oh, I'm sorry.
no. What were you gonna say?
Go ahead, Frank.
I was just gonna say Anthony Michael Hall gets in on the intensity too, like until it ends with the comedy break, but building up to it, it's just like, oh wow, we just took like a dark turn here really quick. Then you find out it was like
Right.
a flare gun, and then they all laugh at him because it's really funny at that point.
Right.
Yeah, but ultimately they are talking about teen suicide, and it's like, how many movies are talking about that, especially when you think about the time that this was released.
In
So-
the 80s,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is before Columbine and everything too.
Netflix
You know what I
hadn't
mean?
put out 13 Reasons Why yet.
Exactly.
Oh man.
And you're right though. These subject matters weren't being tackled. Like the abusive. It gives you a perspective on who the rebel is or the basket case. Maybe he's abused at home and underappreciated, and maybe the geek is like given unachievable expectations, much like the prom queen. You know what I mean? So you're able to create these lines between the characters, which when you're watching it, you know what I mean, just by hearing their own anecdotes.
I learned something while we were kind of working on the podcast or whatever. Don't You Forget About Me was written for this movie, which I had no idea. I just thought it
Simple
was,
Minds.
a tune that they picked for the movie. But man, how sad that is Simple Minds' greatest hit. I dare anyone in the comments to name another Simple Minds song without looking it up online.
I mean,
That's all they got.
to that equivalency, I mean, this is sadly the only notable role for Judd Nelson.
Oh, that's true. Well, he's in St. Elmo's Fire, I think. Another John Hughes written movie, but I've never seen that, so I couldn't tell you if it's good.
So is Emilio Estevez, I believe. But
yeah, you're right. This is sad. He really maybe it was a typecasting thing.
This is his role. This was
Yeah.
kind of like a one-hit wonder kind of thing.
Wow, how crazy.
But
And man, is it like fantastic. Like what a memorable role. Like the movie ends with like John Bender, you know what I mean? Just his quintessential freeze frame, just frozen in everybody's minds throughout history.
this is one of the best movies ever made for sure.
To trash on Breakfast Club a little bit. One thing I didn't like about the movie and was very much brought to the center of my attention this time watching. I just don't buy any of the romantic relationships at the end of this movie. It feels like they get to the 20-minute mark. There's 20 minutes left, and then they're like, okay, we got to couple these people up, and Anthony Michael Hall, you go write it in paper. And it was like, what?
It feels shoehorned for sure.
Yeah, like John Bender has just been railing against Molly Ringwald this whole movie. He's like breaking her down emotionally. And I get the whole, girls like the bad boy, whatever. But it's so far. Like, he's like sexually assaulting her with his, like, verbally, you know what I mean? And then she's
then physically, like, underneath the table. He like sticks his head in between her knees, like up her skirt. Like, that is sexual assault 100%.
Not cool, John Bender. Not cool.
Not cool.
It comes from a broken home, David.
Cut him some slack. No slack.
No, that is not slack that you cut. Never cut that slack.
I'll never cut that slack. I mean, I think that's... is there anything else you guys want to talk... I mean, obviously, there's so much to say about Breakfast Club, but I feel like this is one of those movies where it's been podcasted.
I mean, the soundtrack...
If you don't already know, like, just watch it. Stop being an idiot. It's right? Essential.
That's true. What were you going to say about the soundtrack, Danny?
Well, I mean, the soundtrack's incredible. I mean, like you were saying, Simple Minds and everything like that. But everything else, I mean, it's still one of the highest grossing soundtracks for a movie ever made. Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
And most notable. But I would be remiss if I didn't come in as a stat daddy right now.
Here it is.
Y'all, this movie has the most... As far as what we've spoken, exponential earnings.
Ooh.
Highest earnings of his entire filmography. Can you even guess how much this movie was made on?
Give me those numbers. I can't even.
I won't guess because I have them written down here in front of me. It would be unfair.
$1 million. This movie was made on $1 million.
Wow. Okay.
So then exponentially, this is super high earning because it made $51.5 million. It is a huge success. Probably one of the biggest successes.
That's completely insane.
That's insane.
That is completely insane.
That's what you get for like hiring like young, relatively unknown actors, having like one location with a couple of scenes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then putting out a banger, like boom. Step 3, rake in the money.
I mean, it's 1985. I mean, this is the same year as what? As Uncle Buck? No, Weird Science. So it's like that. You can see why they were just willing to give him whatever money to do whatever.
So I'm saying, like, 1986, John Hughes had some fun in 1986. You know what I mean? He had them paychecks running in. Woo! Had to have been a good year.
Those parties must have been huge.
Wow. Okay.
Get it?
Let's wrap up the John
Let's just
Hughes
keep going, guys.
We got one last movie. Danny, I guess you got to give us the synopsis of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, our number one pick for John Hughes.
This is quite a bit of pressure. I mean, I will say this movie's amazing also in its own right. I mean, the first time I watched this movie, I fell in love. And if you watch this movie, you don't fall in love with it, there's definitely something wrong with you. This story is about a high school student, Ferris Bueller, wants a day off from school. And he's developed an incredibly sophisticated plan to pull it off. He talks his friend Cameron into taking his father's prized Ferrari. And with his girlfriend Sloane, hilarious, head into Chicago for the day. While they are taking in what the city has to offer, school principal Ed Rooney is convinced that Ferris is, not for the first time, playing hooky for the day, and is hell-bent to catch him out. Ferris has anticipated that, much to Rooney's chagrin.
Rooney. I don't like how it says principal, because in the movie it says dean of students on his desk. This was like a clarifying thing when we were watching this movie. And then I was like,
Is that what a principal is?
And then I was like, what's a dean of students? That's like a term that I've never went to a school where there was a dean of students other than like, university, obviously.
A university.
Apparently
usually,
it's part private detective.
Yeah. That guy goes way too hard. And you know what's interesting? In this movie and in Breakfast Club, we have terrible educators. like all over the place. Like, for instance, in Breakfast Club, that principal is taking things way too personally. And he's like threatening John Bender with physical violence. Like, what are you doing, dude? And then in this movie, all the teachers are boring, first off. They're like the driest teachers possible.
You got Ben Stein.
But then you have Rooney, who is like being vindictive about it. It's not even about, I need Ferris to come to school and do his work. It's like, I need to ruin his life.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
He's like jealous.
He will
of Ferris
look
Bueller.
back on the ruin that his life has become, and he will remember Ed Rooney.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you're right, Danny. He's jealous. Like and I think that's what goes on so much in this movie, because Ferris's dynamic is, and it's like you were saying earlier, some of the things that happen in this movie are just unbelievable. But what we're supposed to assume,
he's a human caricature of what he's like. What Snoopy would be like as a person. Ferris Bueller.
Yeah. Just like the unbeatable force that everybody loves.
He's Joe Cool.
Well, I found another John Hughes interview. I won't play it. I'll just tell you, it'll be faster. But anyways, he says that he wrote Ferris Bueller to be the person that everyone wants to be, and that he wrote Cameron to be the person that we really are. Which, when I was telling Frank about this the other day, he was like, well, Ferris Bueller is super selfish, and I wouldn't want to be like that guy. Which is true. I think especially, he's so mean to Cameron. But I think also...
So mean to Cameron.
I think we're supposed to want to get away with anything. It's like that dream of, I wish I could take the day off school and no one would notice, and I could go do all these amazing things and drive this, super expensive car or whatever, and get away with all of it. I want to live recklessly. But yeah, man.
Just like the ad campaigns of our youth taught us, it's fun getting into trouble, David.
That's good, man.
I mean, it definitely goes to show that. What's that? Oh, I was going to say, I mean, it definitely goes to show like that John Hughes has this knack for daydreaming a common daydream that we all have, and really personifying it with like a stack like of just perfectly relatable characters, and some not so much, but that he's able to just make these daydreams that we've all collectively had become on film. You know what I mean?
I could see that. We got to talk a little bit about the parade scene, man, because this is just so crazy to me. When I was a little kid, I thought that Matthew Broderick sang Twist and Shout.
Twist and Shout.
I used to think that was him singing that song. I was so confused. But we watched this movie yesterday. This is the end of our 10-day marathon of John Hughes movies, or however many. We watched a lot of movies this last week. But when we got to the parade scene, I remembered something about it being real. And then we had to like look it up. And it wasn't really looking it up, but it's on the director's commentary. We like pulled the scene up. But yeah, most of that parade scene are real people who like didn't know that this was a movie.
Weird.
So them like crowding that stage and everyone like losing their mind and everything, and all those thousands of people you see in the background, those are just people who just came out because they saw there was like a party going on, and they just crowded that whole. That's like an organic thing that really happened, which is nuts to me.
Old Hollywood, man.
Because it's like you feel so much.
It's magical, you know what I mean? It's a magical thing.
They caught it on camera. Like it'll never happen again.
And even like among all the people, one of the favorite things I learned last night with the commentary with you is like, out of all the people who didn't know it was a movie, there was still like the lady who was playing the accordion on the float, who knew it was a movie, but somehow couldn't get her concept that it was a comedy, and she thought they were doing something to like about like German heritage. So she's just going hard on that thing. She's just trying to like make her people proud. It's really funny.
Yeah, there's a whole thing about like German history, because it's a German parade. It's a German Day parade or something, which apparently they have in Chicago because there's a big German immigrant. Like there's a bunch of German immigrants who settled in Chicago. Let me see. Oh.
What was one of the other? Oh, and it's not like. This is just an experience I had last night with David. We were he was poking around the extras in his DVD and stuff. We watched the scene. Our intention was to watch the scene of Cameron trying to pull the guise of being Sloane's father to Rooney.
Oh, yeah.
But as a side effect, we ended up watching the scene with the English teacher with the French dub, and it was one of the funniest things that I've ever seen, dude. We were giggling like a couple of idiots. It was so funny. The French voice actor who did the dub like goes so hard. He nailed that scene so hard.
Yeah, that was really good. It was like, well, what does the movie sound like in French? I've never seen that.
Yeah.
Let's see what this is like.
Yeah.
You know,
What a nice opportunity to experience Ferris Bueller in a new light.
Ferris Bueller.
Ferris Bueller.
I really like Jennifer Grey's character in this movie. She's always been the most reasonable character in this whole thing. This poor girl, she's having such
His
a rough
sister?
day. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she's just another victim of Ferris. Really.
Yeah.
Like, it must suck enough to have Ferris as your best friend. It must really suck to have him as your brother.
Like, he gets away with everything. Everything. It's insane. You know who else? I always really liked the actress who played Sloane, Mia Sara. And I don't think she's in, like, any other movie that's notable.
Isn't she in, like, a Chris Nolan movie?
What? Really?
I feel like she might be. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to check. I'm on her IMDb at this moment.
I felt like I looked earlier and there wasn't anything that really caught my eye.
No.
Yeah, a
No,
lot of good
just
performances in this movie. Like, Mia Sara stands out, and then Alec Ruck as Cameron is just fantastic too. Like, Alan Ruck as Cameron really. That last scene always gets me, where he's just finally deciding, you know what, my dad can yell at me, whatever. I'm tired of him caring about this car more than myself. Like, this will get him to notice.
Like, I know
Alan
the
Ruck.
intention was for Ferris Bueller to be like everybody's like ideal version of themselves, but I feel like Cameron's like the most likable character in the story. Like, he's just like
He grounds you.
he grounds you. He's like an adorable idiot, but he's not an idiot. You know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
just like he's
Yeah,
not the
he's just-
same
he's a
type of
do-good.
conniving that Ferris is.
Yeah. Well, and Alan Ruck is really good in the HBO show Succession. If you guys don't watch Succession, it's really good. I mean, they're essentially, he plays part of a family that is essentially like if Walt Disney and all of the conglomerates that it owns was ruled by one family, that would be this family in Succession, and they're all terrible people. But
Interesting.
I mean, he just plays it real well.
Okay, I'll have to check that out. That sounds good.
Another thing of note is gosh, I don't even know what she would be. I guess she would be like the secretary in the office to Ed Rooney.
Her name is Edie
Grace?
McClurg.
Yeah, Edie McClurg, also in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
And in
another from the John Hughes catalog.
and she's having a baby too for a little bit.
She's in
she
another
shows up in
one.
a couple of them.
Yeah.
She's super Midwest, and she is hilarious.
Yeah.
And she plays like the quintessential Midwest woman. Probably says sody pop too.
Yeah.
Yeah, she knocks it out of the park in every role that John Hughes puts her in. Just before we like get to the end of this, another person I wanted to shout out who's not in this one, unfortunately, but Bill Irwin, who is like the old man who plays grandpa multiple times. He's also just some old dude at like a restaurant. That guy's so funny, man. Like in all the characters that he does for John Hughes. John Hughes has some solid like character actors in his pocket for sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you know.
Except for Jeffrey Duncan Jones. You should avoid Jeff Jones at every
Oh
point
well, yeah. Jeff Jones.
possible. That man has done some disgusting things.
He got into some serious trouble over some very disgusting stuff, which is weird.
I didn't even write him down like in my list of actors.
Trust me, when I found it out and I was just like, oh no, he's in this. I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I had watched
What a bummer.
Deadwood like last year. I watched Deadwood for the first time, and he has a pretty prominent role in that show too. And I was like, ugh, I wasn't ready for this.
He's in a lot. He's even in like voice acting for like Fallout.
He
Fallout
just
2.
popped up with me the other. I had just watched Devil's Advocate for the first time, and I was like, "Ooh, what a delightful film so far!" And I was like, "Oh, pedophile!"
Yeah, that's a good.
Sleepy Hollow. He's a really good role in Sleepy Hollow too, the Tim Burton one.
Yeah, I mean,
The classic John Leguizamo vehicle, The Pest.
no, he's a good actor. I mean, it's just it's like what's his face.
He's not a good
sad.
person.
He's not a good person. It's like Kevin Spacey. I just have a hard time watching his movies now, and it's a bummer because some of his movies are really good.
Mm-hmm.
But it just feels weird internally. I did want to bring this up. This was a director trademark that I didn't bring up earlier. But I want you all to think about it in all the past movies. The first one is, man, John Hughes loves a big old house. John Hughes loves giving people a house that's like millions of dollars. And because they're all set in Chicago or like Chicago suburbs, they all kind of look the same.
They're the same house, essentially.
Yeah, it's like the Ferris Bueller house is huge. Like Home Alone. Oh my gosh, what does that dad do? He's like a contract killer.
Uncle Buck. That's like
Uncle
a 7-bedroom
Buck.
house.
Yeah, and it's always way more bedrooms than they need. I mean, the only exception is probably Home Alone because there's like too many kids in that house. But Ferris Bueller...
Yeah, that's the only time it was like necessary.
Yeah, Ferris Bueller, there's like 4 of them living there, and a dog who you don't see in any other time in the movie except for when he needs to bite somebody. But then the other...
Yeah, it seems like he mostly just hangs out in the kitchen.
Yeah, I guess so, right? He just makes sure no one comes to that door. The other director trademark, though, is that John Hughes, a lot of times, and in this one in particular, he likes to put a whole movie in one day. And like Ferris Bueller is literally a movie in one day. Breakfast Club, one day. But then you have a couple, like 16 Candles is a day and change. It's a little bit of
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, like 3 days, maybe.
Yeah, and
2-3 days.
Of course, you get one like She's Having a Baby, which really ruins things because that's like 9 months. Like a woman, goes through a whole pregnancy.
Really ruins things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a funny sentence. She's having a baby, which really ruins things.
I'll make a good clip for the future. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I don't know if I had anything else. I mean, what else can you say?
I mean,
about
that is
Ferris
a
Bueller?
stacked. That is the definitive John Hughes uninformed movie reviews list.
Don't let anybody tell you different. They're a filthy liar.
Don't let him.
And they're stupid. Just refer them to this list and tell them that the Thirsty Threesome threw it down for you.
Yeah, run, tell that. How fantastic, how delightful. Another ranking in the bag, y'all.
There we go.
Which I think is going to bring us to our next segment, a little something we like to call Character Limit Extended, where we talk just a little bit more about the film that we talked a little bit about just a week ago on our video segment, Character Limit Exceeded. See, that's how you stay on brand, on topic. Nailed it.
First off,
and I guess the film that we're talking about is Nightcrawler.
I love the little tag you just came up with. We're going to talk a little bit about the film that we talked a little bit about, or something like that. That was great.
Thank you, David. It's we don't have to remember it. It's recording. I'll write it down when I hear it during the edit. We'll be fine.
We're going to put that on T-shirts. Nightcrawler.
Boom.
I was the new one to this movie. So that was kind of nice. We traded off in this big circle, like movies that we hadn't seen, and then we reviewed them. Nightcrawler is really good, man. I mean, and I said a little bit in my review. We started the movie, and we get this like edgy guy who like doesn't fit into society, and then he's driving all over the place. I'm like, man, is this really gonna be Taxi Driver again? Is this going to be like watching stupid Joker movie again? Like, yes, it's good, but guys, it's not Taxi Driver. It's not King of Comedy. Let's calm down. They did this already. But, dude, what a great change that this movie just keeps taking turns.
What a turn, right?
Yeah. It keeps getting more and more intense. Ooh. You keep thinking, how can he get even worse? Like, what line won't he cross? And it turns out none of them. He'll cross every line.
Every line possible. Like, this character thinks that lines are meant, like, they're benchmarks, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I've gotten to this point. I am this successful now.
Yeah.
Why go back now? I mean, seriously, that guy turns into such a sleazebag, and it is just fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I mean, it just keeps pulling you in. It's just like, oh God, he's so gross. What's he gonna do next?
Yeah, and I gotta say, this is a great case of, like, would this movie have worked with just anybody in it? Probably not. Like, you have to have a top tier actor, and man, Jake Gyllenhaal is something else. The movie made me
another movie with Bill Paxton too.
Yeah, and you know what? I could tolerate Bill Paxton in this one.
Let's just keep talking about Bill Paxton.
Maybe because he doesn't end well for him in this movie. I was able to get past it. Spoiler alert, sorry.
Bill Paxton in Nightcrawler is essentially the same character he is in Twister, but instead of like being a meteorologist, he gets like footage for the news.
Yeah.
Because he's just like driving around in a van chasing things.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh,
That's
Dorothy
right.
too.
I mean, I don't have much else to say, guys. This is a must-watch, I would say, though. Go to.
It's a fantastic
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it for anyone that is like even into any sort of drama. But honestly, it just pulls you in. You start watching it, and like right away, you're just like, okay, whoa, okay, I see where this is. But I don't feel like you really understand where the movie's going until he gets his first job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Doing things like that.
And even then, I was trying to like think in my head, where is this movie going to go? And what I was anticipating was totally different than where it landed. And in a way that, you know, it's very inventive. Feels fresh. It doesn't feel super formulaic. Like, you know, it could have. It could have easily been that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I have zero complaints with Nightcrawler. Like, I think it's perfect as it is. I think it's really funny that, like, it was written and directed by the same dude. I don't have it in front of me, but I know I put it in my character limit exceeded. So if you're really curious, instead of giving it a Google, just go check out our video on our David and Frank and Beans YouTube channel. But like, I went to see what else he had done, and nothing really that I'd recognize. And it's so funny to me that this is like really the only like notable thing he's done, and it's so good. And I feel like it got forgotten a little bit, and I had learned it was because it came out right around the same time as Fury did, which caught like wildfire, and something else. I can't remember what it was, but it was another big film.
Yeah.
They actually pushed the release back a couple of weeks to try to like alleviate that, but I just don't think it was enough time.
Was it Interstellar? I feel like it was a Nolan movie. I can't remember.
Oh, God, where's my...
Well, Frank will find it. Yeah, you know, these other movies I'm not really familiar with either. He did Real Steel. I never saw that movie. I assumed it would be really bad.
oh yeah, that looks terrible. It's the Hugh Jackman
I've
BattleBots
seen like
one, right?
a chunk of it. It's not good, man.
Oh, he did Kong Skull
Yeah,
Island.
he
That
wrote.
one's
Yeah,
real
he
good.
wrote Kong Skull Island.
Oh, did he? I
That was
don't
a good
remember
time.
that.
Is he directing? Yeah, he's only done.
Not nearly in
A
the
couple
tier
of
that
directing
Nightcrawler
ones.
is, though. Nightcrawler is leagues above Kong
No.
Skull Island, which is just like a fun, brainless movie. But yeah, Nightcrawler's real good. I didn't come up with this point myself, but I was I saw in another review of Nightcrawler talking about how they wish that maybe the soundtrack was a little more pulsating, maybe more akin to a drive. And I hadn't really noticed it. The first time I watched the movie, I just remember that a song at the end the ending credit song seemed so off to me. Like, this doesn't seem to match the character of this movie at all. But that would have been maybe one little thing that might have made the movie even more enjoyable. But anyway.
I could say so.
The other film it was trying to compete with was Birdman.
Oh, Birdman.
That's right.
Caw-caw.
That's right. That was amazing. Another great watch,
Caw-caw,
by the
caw-caw.
way.
Well, Frank, why don't you kick it on over, man? This has been a doozy of a podcast. We need to start wrapping this boy up.
I know,
right.
my goodness. My apologies, our apologies for the length, I guess, but it's not the first time we've apologized for our length. Of course, I'm referring to how long-winded we can be sometimes.
I mean, you can't talk about John Hughes in brevity. Let's just say that.
That's a fair point.
It deserves the time.
But anyways, that's going to bring us to... Oh, that is interesting. Everyone's favorite segment.
Rest in peace, headphone users.
Oh, that's intense.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
definite.
for some reason on the Zoom it comes out way louder for these guys. But don't worry, listener, you will have heard it at the optimal level because I'm in control of everything over here. Anyways, we're going to be today. We talked about a lot of John Hughes, and we're just going to keep it rolling for one short second to talk about Paramount's remake of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It is currently in development. That's as far as they've gotten with this plan. But it will be starring Kevin Hart and Will Smith, which I feel like it's really easy to guess who's going to play what character in this new film. You know what I mean? They're not going to have Will Smith be Uncle Buck and have Kevin Hart be the straight guy. That's not what's about to happen.
Has Kevin Hart ever played the straight guy?
No, I don't think so. He's
No.
he is a and not as an insult, but he's like the clown. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
he
He's
is.
the funny guy.
Which is weird because he's with Will Smith, who like 20 years earlier would have been the clown.
Yeah.
You know
But
what
it's
I mean?
kind of hard to. It's harder to laugh at Will Smith these days.
Dang, dude. You had to go
It's
there.
more of a sad thing.
I knew you were going there. How
Aw.
dare you, Frank? How dare you?
I like when I picked this, I was like, so we can't do this. It's too easy of a joke. You know what I mean? I have to refrain from it. But it just happened. I didn't really remember thinking I was gonna do it. It just kind of, I saw it happen at the same time you guys did.
I mean, it's very believable thinking that Will Smith would be dying to get home to his loving wife because he is a loving husband. Probably not so much on his wife's end.
Super loyal.
Wow, you guys are so terrible, but you know, I just gotta say,
It's hard for me. It's hard for me to feel bad for Will Smith because I had to watch After Earth. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, he did
I'll
it
just
to himself.
I'll always hold that grudge.
yeah.
I'll always hold that against him.
After Earth, that's a confusing beginning of a sentence. After Earth, we weren't cool anymore, Will Smith. We used to be tight.
Yeah, we have issues now.
You fooled me with Wild Wild
I mean,
West.
he also
when I
did
was 7.
Gemini Man.
I never seen that.
Oh, you don't need to.
Okay, first off, I just gotta say, it should be The Rock and Kevin Hart. They're already an established duo. They're adorable together. They have that nice exchange. It would have been funny. Will Smith, I mean, sure, it could work. I don't mind Will Smith, but I'm also, you know, it doesn't sound that great.
This kind of sounds like a
No,
stinker.
it's probably not going to be awesome. You know what I mean? It seems
could
like
be-
a project that Kevin Hart and Will Smith decided they like. From what I'm reading, like there's not a ton of information on this yet because they're really just developing it between these two teams. It seems like they wanted to do a project together. They finally thought like, oh, this would be a good thing for us. And they're really doing it. It's going to be based in Philadelphia versus like Chicago this time. And it's like their home city. You know what I mean? They're just trying to bring some love to Philly. And this is the way they're going to do it. But I would
Sorry.
venture to wager
Philadelphia. Yeah.
it's not going to be fantastic.
Born and raised.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like this kind of might put it in the same camp as the Vacation remake with Ed Helms.
Whoa.
Which is just like
whoa. Soft reboot, Danny. Watch your language.
soft
Soft reboot. That is Russ as
sorry.
the star, Danny. Show some respect for the continuity of the
is
of
just-
the Vacation storyline.
I mean, I don't think anyone wants this, and that's the sad thing. Is I feel like these execs feel like people want this, but I don't feel like anyone wants this. Just call it something else. Just call it, due date, or call it something else.
Well, I think there's part of it that there's a licensing thing, right? Like they lose the rights to properties if they're not used in a certain amount of time. So sometimes you get
Yeah.
a remake that just has to happen. But
That's why Disney has the vault. You know what I mean?
Yeah. On a positive note, though, I gotta say, of all the John Hughes movies, this one maybe makes the most sense for a remake. Like Curly Sue and she's
I feel
having
like it's
a
the
baby,
less-
it wouldn't make it sense, and the other ones would feel sacrilegious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like the least amount of dancing on John Hughes' grave.
Yeah. Pour one out for the home.
Oh, and can we just really quick talk about how many bad choices John Hughes made with his hairstyles? Because my goodness, there's some awful hair going on the top of John Hughes' head throughout history.
They're all
I
over
mean,
the place.
he's a
man.
cavalier kind of man, sporting a cavalier kind of cut. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of mullets going on, and like out of control mullets too. Like it started as a mullet, and then he needed to go get a haircut, and he didn't do it.
It's such a frontal mullet too.
Yeah.
It's like his hairline's like down to his eyebrows, and it just like parts down the middle, and it's very Karen-y at some points.
Karen-y.
Too.
Oh, yeah.
How dare you? But yeah, you're right. Oh man.
That is
but that's pretty much
interesting,
it.
though,
I
Frank.
just thought that was worth talking about. I figured it would spark some conversation, and it pretty much went along the lines that I thought it would. Like, I mean, I guess if you're going to remake one of them, remake that one.
Well, Frank, that was intriguing. Curious to see what happens there. I guess, though, this means we're at the end of our conversation about John Hughes. And you know what that means, everybody.
It was real, guys. It was fun.
Don't you
What
forget
does it mean,
about us.
David?
What are you still doing here? The podcast is over. Click on another episode. Oh, wait a second. It's actually Peeps and Predicts time.
Hey,
We're back. Welcome back to the encore of the podcast where we have Peeps and Predicts. We take two people, real or fictional, and we pit them against each other in a hypothetical debate. And then we figure out who would be better in these predicaments. You know? We argue about it. That's what we do. That's what the show's all about. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, here we go. Today's... And we always throw in some relevant to the show. This isn't just like, cosmic coincidence, but... We have Ed Rooney versus Principal Vernon. So we have the men... who, quite frankly, shouldn't be in education.
the oppressors of youth.
Yeah, you guys need to quit. You're not doing anybody any favors, and you know what? I bet you're not even enjoying your job anymore. I can see it in the movie, okay? So,
just go get your real estate license. It's not that hard of a process. Yeah. Make some buku bucks moving houses.
Go teach in college. You don't have to care as much. You just fail people. All right, so, here we go. I have, for you all, our first predicament. Who would you trust to babysit your kids? Wow, this is going down a dark hole.
Ooh, okay, so...
Oh, man.
I feel like this is a really easy one.
Woo!
I feel like we don't even need to get into it because it would be dangerous.
Yeah, let's walk
but
away.
Let's just kick Ed Rooney out of there right now.
We were walking a thin line with all the child workers from last episode. We were already dancing on the line, so... Principal Vernon.
It's funny that, like, some points in your life, like certain things just link up. And I'm really glad that our earlier conversation about Ferris Bueller linked up just perfect with this.
It's amazing. I hope you've been paying attention.
We don't have to get into it any further than we already did in Ferris Bueller.
Okay, one round.
Principal Vernon wins.
Yeah, one round for Principal Vernon. Here's our second. It's best 2 of 3. Who would throw a better high school rager? Neither one of these characters would ever throw a party for a high school student. This is like their worst nightmare.
It is the
one
worst
of them
nightmare,
definitely should
but
not.
I feel like Vernon would throw the better party. And not saying that this is a good thing, but this guy was like slamming beers in the middle of the day, like on the job, versus Ed Rooney, who just seems like there's no time that he ever lets his hair down. Like, I bet this guy is a prick throughout like every aspect in his life.
I was going to say the same thing. Ed Rooney comes off as someone who has no fun ever, total stick in the mud. Whereas Vernon, to me, comes off as like the cool guy. Maybe he was like a cool guy in his youth and is now frustrated as an older man and is not happy with his job. He's taking down everybody. I could see him actually having a good time.
The problem might be he's supposed to be shaping these kids, which is like super annoying to him. But if he was allowed to just like cut back and hang out, I bet he'd be all about it.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, I'm glad we're done with this because now I can get rid of Ed Rooney. We don't have to talk about him anymore. But
toss him to the wayside.
Peeps and Predicts isn't over because we have a reigning champ every week, and our reigning champ for quite a few episodes. Let's be honest.
I mean, he's so mighty.
It's Arnold the Governator Schwarzenegger. That's confusing. And
he's arguably just as indestructible as Batman is.
Yeah. I mean, except that Batman beat Arnold Schwarzenegger. Never forget that, everyone. Batman and Robin.
Oh.
Great film. No, I'm just joking. Terrible.
But he ain't here now, but he ain't... here now.
Batman.
He ain't never come back.
He's not the hero we deserve, but he's the hero we need. Okay. Here we go. Arnold versus Principal Vernon. This is ridiculous. Who's more likely to have an awkward still frame fade shot at the end of a John Hughes film? Well, I think one of these has a distinct advantage over the other. One of them is a John Hughes character.
Being in one.
Yeah.
Although I would say, given the list of people that were slated to be Uncle Buck, feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger is not far off from actually having been Uncle Buck.
That would have been nice.
I don't know if that would have made the movie better necessarily, but it would have been quite a watch.
Yeah, I was gonna, it'd be worth watching no matter what. I do got to bring up something though. So this is the character Principal Vernon, who's not aware that he is in a movie. So is this saying that he would be in a John Hughes movie inside a John Hughes movie in some sort of Inception scenario? Or is Arnold Schwarzenegger would have been more likely because he's actually a real person and an actor and not fictional?
Ooh.
No, I think factually, like, the character would be more likely to be the freeze frame subject at the end of a John Hughes movie because he is a John Hughes character. Like,
That's
I feel
fair.
like it's simple enough.
That's fair.
Like, it is fun to play devil's advocate, but I feel like as much as I want Arnold to be reigning champ till the end of time, I don't think he has this one.
I feel like I will play a little bit of devil's advocate here, though. But it's not really for Arnold. It's just the movie within a movie, because I do know in the John Hughes-averse, there's a part in She's Having a Baby where the part where Kevin Bacon was hailing a cab at the same time as Steve Martin in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles in the beginning can be heard in a movie that the wife is watching in She's Having a Baby.
What?
Right.
Boom. That's kind
That's
of
pretty nuts.
I love that kind of thing.
Kind of weird, though, right?
You know, as much as it
It's
hurts
not
me
as
about-
weird as Ludacris existing as a character in a movie where Ludacris also exists.
It's not as weird as science. But I gotta agree with Frank. I think
I mean,
it's got to be Principal Vernon. I don't like the idea of him being our Puce and Predicts champ, but that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
well, I mean, that's the thing with Principal Vernon. You don't like him, but you like him.
Yeah.
Much to John Bender's chagrin, Principal Vernon is here to stay.
Got you for 2 whole years.
Well, folks, it has been real. It has been a delight.
Yeah.
Like, share, subscribe. Go check out the content over on Apollo City Comics. It is on the same channel, just a different playlist.
Yeah.
It's over here somewhere. You got to go to the thing. You can figure it out. Send us some
right.
suggestions for Peeps and Predicts. If there's a movie you want to hear us talk about it, let us know. It'll make you feel like you have some control over this, although the schedule's already in place.
Absolutely. And control is just an illusion, if anything, really. And we're here to perpetuate that. Follow us on Spotify. Follow us on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts. And follow us on social media. We got an Instagram there where we post clips and stuff. And be on the lookout. We got another CLE coming up for you. And we got another good old UMR podcast coming up for you.
Yeah.
And if we've ever offended you in any way, just go to Instagram and go to @GraveSpeak and just start reporting anything that's there. Just report it for any reason.
And I just got to shout out, next week we got another CLE coming up. Son-in-Law. So get ready. Watch your copy of Son-in-Law. Talk about it next week.
Like to strike that from the